Hmm. Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everyone. Pasta Jardula here.
And I'm Fiorella.
And Oz, with his overalls, is spinning on the ones and twos. How you doing there, Oz?
Doing great, guys.
He's good. He's giving me thumbs up, you know? Love you too, Oz. I can see in a little small picture. He's got the overalls on. Fam, I'm getting overalls.
You keep saying that. Go get you some overalls on.
Well, I don't know where to get them. I went to Target the other day. Target did not have overalls. They said, excuse me, sir, where's the overall section? Like, we don't have that here.
Fam, you need to go. There's LA has a lot of thrift stores, and you can go back and find where overalls come from, the 70s, right?
Yeah, right.
Or maybe before that. I don't know, like Grapes of Wrath era.
I mean, come on. They were wearing overalls back in the Dust Bowl.
No.
I wish the imperialists would get tired of their favorite toy, Russiagate. They use it to censor everything and steal our rights. I use it to watch Maddo back in the day. This is sad. Press TV revived the brain cells I lost watching MSNBC. That's Embold Fate, Embold Fate. Thank you so much. And that's awesome. Yeah, it is true. And we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about a lot of things. Yeah, I mean, not only are they using Russiagate to enact act policy, to, put policy into play, they're using January 6th, same thing.
Yeah.
They're using all these fairy tales to make actual real policy.
They actually spread this information and then gaslight Americans into thinking that exposing the disinformation that they're spreading is conspiracy. And that's where we're at. And that is fascism. We are really, really gearing really at full speed towards a fascism. But they've gotten smart and they've realized they can't full on just keep everybody at home and start this totalitarian regime. They have to make you feel like you have freedom, like you have a choice, like you have a say. And so what they do is they create this illusion of choice via the election system, via this duopoly. And then they put people like the Squad and progressives to kind of string the carrot of Medicare for all and a $15 minimum wage and all these things that they have zero intention of passing along as crumbs. And they keep dangling that carrot over and over again. So you continue participating in the system when really what we need to do is be done with the system. Yeah. And of course, saying that is now like going to target me and anybody that says that. But that is the reality. And so that's what's going on.
We got about 90 people over at YouTube. Oz LaFave is there hanging on out. Hey, Oz. Nicole, Jilly Love, Cam Ross, FB, Free Thinker, Ron Ultra, The Al Show. Or is that the AI show? Could be the AI show. Could be the Al Show. You make that decision. Guys, get over to Rokfin. ROKFIN on your FM dial. We're here in the morning. Okay, that was very uncomfortable. But the funny thing about it is, fam, when we start talking about these situations, right? Okay. We start talking about, January 6th, how they're making policy.
Yep.
And then we start talking about Russiagate and they make policy. And a lot of times you'll see a lot of people go, well, it's the Republicans. No, in Congress, if you listen to these hearings, if you watch these hearings, the majority of the neocon Republicans, the old school Republicans, are still anti-Russia. And in fact, they were blaming Biden for being too soft on Russia immediately. You know what I'm saying? And now that Donald Trump is out, you can see some of those people who were kind of like hiding in the shadows a little bit more amp up their anti-Russia rhetoric inside the Congress. And out there, they're just complete neocons. They talk about China with no proof. Not saying that China isn't a competitor, but we should be their frenemy, is what Tom Steyer said. We need to sit down and talk to them, and that's what we should be doing right now. Have to share our global wealth now. They are a big player in the game, so times are changing. We can't bomb our way out of it. However, if this next section we're going over, it seems like the same old boss, right? Remember the new boss? Mm-hmm. Same as the old boss, same mentality. They want to go forth with a certain rhetoric, a certain attitude, and really just don't pay attention to what's going on in real life. I mean, our Congress right now is using these Russiagate narratives, these China situations, to just continuously make policy that really isn't necessary. You know what I'm saying? So I made a thread, fam, because you were the thread master and I copied you. I thought your Georgia thread was so awesome that if anybody had a question, they could just go to the thread, look it up and say, hey, look at this, look at that. That's cool. Now, So last week, the House Financial Service Subcommittee on National Security, International Development, and Monetary Policy held a hearing titled, and this is number one, Oz, let's go to the first part of the thread. Get it on up. The thread.
So slide 2, I think.
No, the thread. And if you go to the green one now, click the thread. Nope.
It's at the bottom.
It's at the bottom. The thread. There we are.
Go.
Let's get it in there. Is it clear? Could it be seen? It looks a little hazy. Okay. So last week, the House Financial Service Subcommittee on National Security, International Development, and Monetary Policy held a hearing titled Schemes and Subversion, How Bad Actors in Foreign Governments Undermine and Evade Sanctioned Regimes. Here's the highlights thread. So number one, why is it important to pay attention to these hearings, fam? Because if policy is written for further use of U.S. sanctions, as well as the sanctioning of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, the data and analysis will be more than likely produced from this subcommittee. So if you pay attention to what's going on, if you can make that a little bigger, so they can see it, if you pay attention to what's going on, yeah, that's blurry as hell. We can't even see that.
It's weird.
Oz? Hold on 1 second. Hold with us.
He's Johnny saying it's fine. I don't know.
All right.
Just read it.
I'm going to just continue to read it then. Okay. So number two, these are the things we should be paying attention to in this hearing, fam. The framing of the use of sanctions by the committee. I don't know if you remember when we had Tulsi on the show and we asked her about sanctions. She told us there's no mechanism that measures and shows the United States Congress what sanctions do and actually who they affect. And that's something that's really serious here because sanctions, Mike Gravel said it, it's an act of war. And when sanctions are opposed, they really hurt the most vulnerable. So we have to pay attention to the way they're framing sanctions. I think we should have a whole hearing on the effect of sanctions, but they don't do that. They just go along like sanctions are okay. Number two, the demonizing of the U.S. adversaries. Who are we talking about? You can tell if you listen to these hearings, you can tell who the Congress is focused on. It's more the same in the mainstream media. They pick it up, but we pay attention to that. And three, the framing of how cryptocurrencies are used to get around sanctions and the alleged actions of these adversaries. You know what I'm saying? People who are just trying to feed their citizens. Okay? So those are the things we're going to pay attention to. Now, the main witness, number three, the main witness or advisor to get asked most of the questions, who's the head of the FDD. His name was Jesse Spiro. Mr. Spiro's overall feelings is that the U.S. shouldn't ban or outlaw cryptocurrencies, but rather embrace the technologies and find ways to hold U.S. sanctions accountable. I don't know how I feel about this, fam, because, they took this kind of position that, okay, listen, we understand that you want to make sure your sanctions are okay, and they are okay with that. They're really not fighting back or pushing back against that, but they're saying we have to embrace the blockchain. We have to embrace cryptocurrency and understand how it works, so therefore we can work around it. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's the attitude. That's I guess the what's the word I'm looking for? The ally we have in this hearing somewhat is someone who says that, oh yeah, I know you want to do cryptos, but we're gonna embrace it. We're not gonna try to ban it, So
what, embrace? So he's saying we need to embrace cryptocurrency. And you're saying you're not sure if that's good?
I think it's good, but the mentality that still we're going to help you go through and follow through with your sanctions. In other words, we're going to embrace the whole system of the blockchain. We're going to embrace cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin because there's an argument here, and you're going to see a lot of people like, how do we get rid of it? They're trying to tie it to Russia. They're trying to tie it to Hamas. So they want to ban it. There's a push in the United States, especially from the old geezers. Let's get rid of cryptocurrency.
Right.
There's some people who come in Congress and
the reason they're saying that is because they want cryptocurrency to continue.
Yeah.
Because cryptocurrency in itself, it's still capitalism. You're still participating in the system of capitalism. You're just using a different type of currency. At the end of the day, just like anything else in the system, it's going to be like, that was my whole thing with it. It's always going to be controlled and more so by people who have more money. Like that's the reality of it. And so if they were to say, no, you have to stop sanctions, that they wouldn't get anything across. So from their perspective, they're gonna say like, oh, we can work around your sanctions. We're not gonna get involved in that. Yeah. Because it's like, if they don't say that, then where do they go? And it's sad because but you shouldn't have cryptocurrency leaders aren't there to advocate against sanctions. That's got to come from the American public. That's got to come from, you know, activism on the ground. You're not going to, you know, that these people are focused on money, are focused on getting this off the, you know, off its course. But it would actually be beneficial to them if these people used the cryptocurrency and weren't plagued by sanctions. So it's a two-way thing.
Yeah. Number 4, the witness or advisor called with the second most questions was the FDD's Eric B. Lordber. Eric was a senior advisor to the Undersecurity for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence at the United States Department of Treasury. So he's worked in that sector before, as far as, you know, how we get sanctions, how we impose them, how we keep them. Let's go around that. They had 5 witnesses, fam. These particular 2 witnesses took 90% of the questions and gave advice. The other 3 witnesses, I think one of the witnesses got to answer 2 questions. One of the other witnesses answered 1 question. And one of the other witnesses, the professor from Tufts, he got 0 questions. So it's like he showed up to be a witness or an advisor, and he got no time. He got his 5-minute opening, but you could tell what he was talking. He was a traditional, this is how we go about sanctions, and it's a new world. It's a new time. So really, to tell you the truth, a lot of this particular hearing was to gather information about how we can go along and point out facts of how people are evading our sanctions. Wrong conversation, but that's what it is, and that's where our U.S. Congress is. So let's start with number 5, the chairman, Jim Hines. Listen to the way he frames sanctions as just a carrot on a stick to get a country to change their behavior, fam. Mm-hmm. This just blows my mind right from the beginning. If the chair is acting this way, you know, then you're just going, oh my God, let me embrace for a long friggin' hearing. He also mentioned that by starving out poor people in Iran, he said it was successful to bring them to the table. So in other words, you got to kill hundreds of thousands of people to bring them to the table, and you're going to label that as successful. Let's take a look at his quick clip I put of Jim Hines.
Sanctions are an important instrument in foreign policy designed to be both a carrot and a stick in persuading an entity, an individual, a group, or a country to change its behavior. A step beyond traditional diplomacy, it also avoids the downsides of kinetic action. We've seen the success of our sanctions regimes in bringing the Iranians to the table and isolating human rights violators through the global Magnitsky Act, amongst others. Our sanctions programs can only be as impactful as they are effective. When designated entities evade our sanctions, we lose an important tool from our diplomatic toolbox, increasing the likelihood that military action would be necessary to maintain international order. Our hearing today will focus on those methods of sanctions evasion, ranging from physically changing the name painted on the back of a ship, the stern of a ship, to the use of shell companies to cyber-enabled crime, like the ransomware attacks that have been so prevalent in the news recently. This committee has worked to address some of these issues through the passage of the Corporate Transparency Act, authored by Chairwoman Carolyn Maloney, and the Anti-Money Laundering Act, sponsored by Chairman Emmanuel Cleaver as part of the 2021 National Defense Authorization Act. These bills give law enforcement the resources and authority to better track money launderers, including sanction evaders, and their success will depend in large part on this body adequately funding their implementation. In addition, the Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, and the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, continue to do the extremely important work of educating market participants and putting out guidance on the newest typologies of sanctions evasion. However, serious threats to the efficacy of our sanctions programs lay just on the horizon and are approaching quickly. Though the launch of the Venezuelan, quote, Petro was an unambiguous failure, widespread use of alternative financial platforms could make sanctions evasion trivially simple. And though the Federal Bureau of Investigation was able to recover a portion of the ransom paid by Colonial Pipeline, we're likely to see continued growth in ransomware attacks from sanctioned entities as a way to raise funds.
All right, Oz. Fam, you have any, he laid it all out there. I mean, this is the mentality and the jumping point from where Congress is at. It's right. Like they're not going to even pay attention to what sanctions do. It's a carrot and a stick. We want to use it to change their behavior. And so how do we make sure that we make our sanctions stick while naming out all the freaking enemies that we have, while tying it to crypto, while tying it to ransomware? Yeah. It's one big fucking story. So
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just the same old, right? This is what they do.
Yeah.
They're going to continue doing this until the American public says no more. I mean, it has to come from the American public and everybody else too outside of it. But really, we're the ones here that are allowing this government to do as it pleases in our name. And while they're doing that, they are taking any sort of attention or funds, however you want to perceive that is created, right? Away from any help that people need. So if people understood that our domestic policy is directly tied to our foreign policy, they'd be a lot more upset that that all of this attention and all this money and all this like work that they're supposed to be doing is going to pretty much murdering, starving people all over the world, particularly the Middle West or the Middle East, West Asia, and the global South.
absolutely. Oz, we're gonna play the next one, but listen up, we don't have to play the whole thing, so I'll tell you when to cut it. You can watch me or whatever what's going on. This is the co-chair, and it's funny, ladies and gentlemen. You take a guess: is it a Republican or a Democrat who's really who's talking at these points? Because it doesn't say it on the screen, and I had a hard time going. Is that a Republican or a Democrat? You don't know. It's one big fucking aisle. So this is the co-chair, Andy Barr. He's quick to mention China, of course. He also points out that it's a bipartisan effort to implement sanctions, which are an act of war. Representative Barr is quick to justify these sanctions by claiming it is to stop bad actors from getting paid. Let's start to roll the tape.
This subcommittee plays a crucial role in maintaining U.S. national security through economic channels and ensuring robust international development. China continues to pose a threat to U.S. competitiveness, and American sanctions policy is more important than ever. Additionally, the impact of monetary policy is becoming increasingly evident to the everyday consumer as increased costs are hitting their pocketbooks. This subcommittee plays a crucial role at the intersection of the financial system and national security and provides meaningful oversight over the Federal Reserve's monetary policy activities. I look forward to working with members of this subcommittee on both sides of the aisle to preserve a fair international financial system and ensure that the Federal Reserve remains independent and focused on its congressionally directed mandate. During my time on this subcommittee and previous Congresses, including as its chairman, we accomplished a great deal of significant and important work. The issues we discuss on this committee transcend party lines, and I look forward to working closely with Chairman Himes and all members of both sides of the aisle on our shared priorities. The U.S. employs a robust...
And he'll go on to mention China, whatnot, and it's a robust sanctions program, fam, when we're trying to stop bad actors. And he mentioned once again, it's bipartisan there. We do this together. It's one big aisle. And the next part, fam, I just put up is who does number 7, who does sanctions, U.S. sanctions affect? Oz, you got it up. Mainly poor people. Okay. They normally don't get the intended target to change its behavior. That's what they always try to do. And I have a little article here from Jacobin. It says the U.S. sanctions are designed to kill. U.S. sanctions are killing ordinary Iranians by the thousands. Through its control over the world banking system, America's sanctioning power floats international human rights laws and poses a threat to the world. Any thoughts on that, fam?
I mean,
hello.
Exactly. That's nothing more to say. I mean, that's what it does. That's what they do. Yeah.
Number 8, we're not going to play the video. It just points out that Representative Barr, who is the co-chair, points out that the traditional use of avoiding sanctions and how it's now morphed into cryptocurrency, okay, while casting blame on another adversary, Russia. So he ties in that it's cryptocurrency. He ties in the ransomware, and I don't think it's a coincidence, fam, that he mentioned ransomware and Russia together in the same statement. We talked about this with the Colonial Pipeline. We were laughing hysterically because Robbie Receipts, our man from the MCSE network, has been talking about the Colonial Pipeline leaks for so long, and all of a sudden they come on with ransomware. What are the Russians doing? But please, if you have time, go to the thread and watch it yourself. Let's go to number 9. It's a little cut up because the gentleman was doing it from his car. He's still milking the whole COVID thing. This is Josh Gottheimer. And no party would be complete, fam, without your friendly neighborhood Zionist. He mentions Hamas. He ties their gains to Bitcoin. And of course, if you listen to Representative Gottheimer, you'd think it would be a one-sided war between Israel and Hamas, with Hamas as the bully. And don't get me wrong, ladies and gentlemen, this might be about sanctions and crypto and whatnot and how they're tying it in, but they'll always take a shot or use their speaking time as a chance to speak their word to their donors and let the people know where they stand.
Right.
Listen to this Zionist, how he speaks. It's a little cut up, but you can hear it. Gonna play the video.
Thank you, Chairman Himes, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. Just last month, the terrorist group Hamas fired thousands of rockets into Israel in just 7 days while using Gazans as human shields. Like cutting off their funding streams. The Department of Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, or OFAC, works to accomplish just that. Still, we have a lot more to enhance and strengthen our sanctions. A lot more work to do. By my bipartisan legislation, the Hamas International Financing Prevention Act requires that the president submit to Congress an annual report for the next 3 years identifying entities, including foreign persons and governments, which knowingly and materially assist Hamas or the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and impose at least 2 or more crippling sanctions. Mr. Spiro, in an effort to fundraise for its military operations and skirt sanctions, Hamas has reportedly received an uptick in Bitcoin donations since the terrorist group's conflict with Israel last month. What do we know about the volume of cryptocurrency being solicited by groups like Hamas, and is law enforcement equipped to track and prevent these payments?
Congressman, I appreciate that question. It is obviously very timely. And, in short, what I can say is we know a significant amount of information about those payments. We know volumes. It's around $140,000 or the equivalent since September of 2020. We know additionally some of the connectivity in relation to services, the services that were used in relation to those donors. And all of that information comes, again, from the power of the data, from the power of the blockchain and the blockchain forensics.
And we know that there was cryptocurrency used and particularly by Hamas in terms of solicitation.
Yes. So there is legacy information in relation to solicitation of donations by Hamas going back a number of years.
There you go. Fam, make sure you tie that cryptocurrency to Hamas.
This is why I get so angry at people like Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib, who really just manufacture consent that Hamas is this big terrorist group, that they're, attacking Israelis. Notice how he didn't mention at all how Palestinians were bombed and continue to be bombed and continue to be pushed out of their homes illegally, and how they have international law, like the international law allows them to defend themselves, and all they have available are rockets. And so when you don't mention it, right, when you don't mention that Palestinians are being murdered so many times over, how many Israeli people died in the strikes that Hamas and others have launched on Israel, that shows that you're signaling to your donors,
absolutely,
hey, I'm here, I'm part of AIPAC, I'm here with you, I'm going to stand by you. You're using all the correct talking points because you're a fucking PR stunt idiot for the establishment. And that's all that you are. And so it really, for me, these idiots all having like a ceremony to talk about how they need sanctions, I don't want my fucking money. I don't want these people paid to do that. I am so done with these politicians and the way they try to misconstrue all this information. When it's disgusting to me that they have the audacity to say all these lies and call themselves Congress people. Like it's blatant lies. Palestinians are still being bombed right now, and nobody's talking about it because they're on to the next topic of whatever is happening. And it's just like beyond ridiculous to be tied to, like, you can't even give Palestinians help because like it's so difficult because of the sanctions. It's so difficult because Israel like stops everything. So the only way they get help is through like direct contacts on the ground. And this is directly from people who have been to Palestine, who have been to Gaza, who have been to these countries that we screw over like Syria. This is directly from them. And like, it's hard to even get them anything. And the little bit of help that they can get to maybe have water or some food or something to help the injured, you're trying to stop that too. So you're complicit in genocide and murder.
Yeah. And the fact that they're tying Bitcoin to Hamas. That's the left,
But that's
the
why,
leftist democratic Zionist movement. So that you're going to see stuff coming in, but watch, they're going to start going after Bitcoin the way they're trying to tie it to Hamas. Why? Because he doesn't give a shit about it. Bitcoin. He has enough American dollars that he gets paid and he's taken care of. So he doesn't give two shits that it helps poor people or it helps, get people food, medicine, and all those things, because that's what they're trying to do when they get around sanctions. They're trying to get people the basic needs. And that was the Democratic Zionist, fam. So we have to go to the Republican Zionist, okay? Roger Williams, number 10. He made sure he took a shot at the president for not applying enough pressure against another Zionist adversary, Iran. You're not doing it strong enough. He called them a hostile regime. So now we got China. We mentioned China and Russia, Hamas. Let's get Iran in there. Let's make sure we get them in there. Here's Mr. Williams. These old geezers, I'm so sorry. They need to go. They're so fucking far out of touch and out of date.
Last week, the Biden administration rolled back sanctions against some former senior national Iranian company officials and several companies involved in shipping and trading petrochemical products. I'm very concerned that these actions will allow Iran an easier path to avoid sanctions and further engage in a trade-based money laundering. I would much prefer President Biden continue the Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign against the hostile regime. So, Mr. Lorber, can you give us your thoughts on if you think these actions by the Biden administration open up the door for greater sanction evasion, or do you believe we still have tools at our disposal to monitor and influence the hostile regime's behavior?
All right, you can stop it there. If anybody wants to watch the answer, yes, you can stop that, Oz. If anybody wants to go watch the answer, go ahead and because they'll give you the same bullshit answers about what we can do, embrace. But you just got to listen to the rhetoric. You know what I'm saying? Oh, the hostile regime, Iran. You know what I'm saying? And we just read something that said that thousands of people died. Hundreds of thousands of people died because of our sanctions. Those are poor people. We starve them out. We don't give them medicine. We make sure that their banking system doesn't work. So now they want to tie it to cryptocurrency and whatnot and saying, is there another tool we have in our toolbox, fam, to make sure that we starve these hostile regimes out?
Disgusting.
Number 11, Roger Williams continued to do this living in the 1980s. I have to point this part out. We have to watch a little of this because he doesn't even understand the technological age. He's actually stating that small businesses are scared and that they will be victims of ransomware attacks by the Russians, the underground.
The Russians are here right now in the room.
This is an underlying McCarthyite statement, ladies and gentlemen. This is the fucking Republicans. They do it too as well in Congress. Just play his question. We don't need to hear his answer, and then we'll go on to the next thing.
We've seen an increase in ransom attacks on American businesses this past year, and I've spoken with some small business startups around my district who have expressed concerns that they will never be able to protect themselves if a hostile actor attempts this type of attack on their business. They see companies with entire teams of people dedicated to cybersecurity being compromised and feel hopeless if they become the next target. So, Mr. Spiro, is there anything we can be doing from the federal level to help these businesses, small businesses, that may not have the resources to put towards cybersecurity or some more established companies to defend against ransomware and other cyber attacks?
Congressman, I appreciate that question.
Yeah, fam, there you go. Be careful. Little guys, the Russians are going to come after you with ransomware. Really, what's the point of somebody using ransomware on a small tool shop in the middle of Memphis, fucking Tennessee? Oh, they're going to hack into your shit, but that's what they want you to think, that the boogeyman's coming, so it justifies their sanctions and their actions.
So they're
not coming after fucking small businesses, fam.
No. So you don't look at them. They're not coming at all. The Russians aren't interested. They're like Putin. God, I want to watch this whole interview of Putin, and I gotta break that down because it's just obnoxious. I know I joke all the time about being Putin's wife and Misty's Putin's buddy, but really, they think the Russians are here in the room with them. They think the Russians are under their bed. They think the Russians are in the closet after 5 years almost of bullshit that was completely debunked. I just can't take anything they say seriously, Pasta.
I hear you, fam, and it's hard to take things seriously. Number 12 is Warren Davidson. Now, Warren Davidson's an interesting cat. I shared one of his tweets last week. He's for the idea of cryptocurrencies. He still sells the idea of sanctions, but thinks we shouldn't ban cryptocurrency, rather adjust our tactics, the U.S. tactics, to target how cryptos are being used. This is Warren Davidson. You don't have to listen to the answer again, Oz, just his question, and then we'll go on to the next part.
Our current sanction regime contains faulty elements that often unintentionally harm American citizens and businesses. Too often we see bad actors evade our sanctions infrastructure through trade-based money laundering, illicit shipping, or front companies in third-party countries, and numerous other ways. Thankfully, as this hearing shows, I'm not alone in recognizing the need to discuss and reform our outdated systems. This past April, it was encouraging to see the Deputy Secretary of Treasury announce that Treasury would conduct a top-to-bottom review of Treasury sanctions programs. Given the failures in the current BSA, AML, KYC framework and gaps, we should understand that doubling down on the same tools of surveillance, reporting, and control mechanisms in our financial systems will prove inadequate. The government should stop trying to control the tool that is money in the financial system and instead focus on targeting the illicit acts and actors. We must explore an alternative approach to BSA, AML, KYC, and the sanctions regime so that we could have a flexible, targeted, and effective approach. Currently, the SDN
That's good,
list is...
Yeah. So pretty much there you are. He's like, hey, man, we got to stop paying attention to, like, how do we stop the cryptocurrencies are getting through, and let's concentrate on the actual actions. Let's look at it from the other lens. A lot of people have come here to say we have to stop these cryptos. We have to stop them from being used. There's no way we can sanction them. So we have to stop them. This guy has had a different approach. And even in the next part, fam, he talks about the theory of ransomware being a direct link to cryptocurrency as bullshit. But he also stated that too many within the Congress, too many people are distracted with what is called an anti-crypto narrative. We don't have to play that video. We're just going to skip that one. But pretty much he talks about that. Davidson is one of those guys who's, he's playing ball as far as sanctions. He's not saying anything against sanctions, but he is speaking up for cryptocurrencies. And it's kind of like, that's the small win you get here. Is like, okay, we got some people within our Congress, the younger members, and some people who are advocates for cryptocurrencies. Like, they're an asset. You can't fuck with them. You shouldn't mess with them. Who cares if it's another money system? It's still an asset. And it's like if you want to buy art and it gains, value or whatnot. So they have this mentality like, let's just adjust to it, as opposed to instead of trying to ban or censor it. So, I mean, I don't know if you call it a win because he's still all about sanctions. Right. There's no talk about sanctions, but that's what we get, fam. So I don't know your thoughts about that, but I guess he's somewhat of an ally. I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I mean, unless you're stopping sanctions, you're really on the same side. I mean, an ally for cryptocurrency. Yeah. But
not for, we have no allies to be back against sanctions. We have zero allies. We have no fucking friends in Washington. The jumping point is like, how do we get these sanctions to stick? The problem is people are avoiding it. Iran and North Korea and all that. How do we stop them from avoiding it? How about we talk about who sanctions kill and what they do? But anyways, let's not get to that because we're not going to get that. But we've pointed it out so you know. Number 14 is, what is KYC? You heard this used before. KYC stands for Know Your Customer. It's a term commonly used by banks, but now it's frequently used by Congress as a way to identify and label potential adversaries or bad actors who are trying to avoid sanctions. So it's all that whole part about making sure that you have the process of identifying who your customer is. You have to have all the paperwork on them, all their their social security, all that shit. So when they talk about KYC in the next part, number 15, Jake, I want to say his name right, Auchincloss, okay, well, they start talking about KYC and saying, well, how can KYC be used in the blockchain? It's very important to understand this because Congress members really don't understand how cryptocurrencies work. They don't understand that they're not 100% untraceable, that you can find them. They can trace it back to the wallets so they can understand, know your customer within the cryptocurrency world. It could be done. This is Jake Auchincloss asking that question. We should probably play this whole video and then we'll kind of talk about it after.
I actually want to build on what my colleague, Mr. Davidson, was asking about with Know Your Customer and blockchain. And Mr. Spiro, I'd like to engage with you on these questions. And because there might be a few of them, I'd ask with respect that you try to keep your answers relatively concise. So is Know Your Customer harder with blockchain for technical reasons, for political reasons, or not at all?
Congressman, that is a wonderful question. And in relation to it, I think that KYC, that kind of collection, is now a different challenge because we pivoted from the brick and mortar institution into digital finance. As such, synthetic identities and fraudulent identities and deepfakes are problematic. They were cited, in fact, in relation to a recent designation on Second Eye Solutions. And those kinds of providers providing that kind of fraudulent information mean that bad actors, including sanctioned actors, could circumvent those kind of controls at exchanges.
So, okay, so you're saying that there are technical reasons why blockchain would be a good vector for bad actors to evade KYC. And am I right in saying that there's also political reasons why it's hard to do KYC because states like Russia, for example, are not providing the international cooperation we need to find these actors?
I think in relation to the regulation in this space that different jurisdictions are choosing to apply or not apply, those that have regulatory arbitrage, unclear regulation, or have chosen to ban cryptocurrency run inherent risks in that you will see illicit activity funnel into those jurisdictions. The Financial Action Task Force, conducts mutual evaluations in relation to money laundering, potentially would impact mutual evaluation if it would continue. But it is something that we have seen in different jurisdictions that have either chosen not to apply regulation, to ban cryptocurrency, for example.
All right, so pretty much there it is. It's we're not going to go over the next one because Mr. Spiro just explains that it would be harder for bad actors to evade sanctions with the blockchain if the U.S. used more resources to understand these digital currencies. This is number 16, and pretty much, he's setting the table for saying, listen, the U.S. needs to stop running away from this. And, Auchincloss is kind of putting it out there like, well, KYC is something that can be avoided in the blockchain. That's the mentality. And Mr. Jesse Spiro is saying, no, it's not. If we understand, if we spend more time and resources understanding this stuff, tracking wallets, that whole sort of thing, we can actually fortify KYC, know your customer. And it's a big thing because if the Congress understands that we can identify who the customer is, when it comes to our sanctions, then they're more likely to go along with it and saying, okay, let's not try to ban cryptos. Let's try to get into it. So it's a very important talking point when it comes to this situation. KYC, pay attention to it because that's where the argument is going to be. It's going to say we can't identify people through cryptocurrencies. Yes, we can. We can identify wallets. We can flag them. We can track them. If we spend more time and resources, we can get ahead of that. So let's not ban cryptos. Let's embrace them. So that's a point of Congress we haven't seen before where a lot of congressmen are now understanding, educating themselves, and talking about that. Number 17, it's the North Korean section part of the hearing. Representative Hill questions why and how North Korea is the king of evading sanctions with the help of Russia and China, and also questions why Russia isn't doing a good enough job. You got to refresh it sometimes, Oz. Right below that one, it will say refresh. Below it, move it up a little bit. Up right there. Force refresh. There it goes. So there is Mr. French Hill. And we're not going to play the video, but we're going to go to number 18. And it says, who knew that North Korea was one of the best at evading sanctions? This is what I learned. With the help of China and Russia, they use slick tactics. Go to number 18, please. Like changing the name of cargo ships, fam, carrying cargo to avoid Coast Guard ships and sanctioned vessels. If you could scroll up, Oz, to number 18. There you are. And I just put down North Korea is evading international sanctions with sophisticated networks of overseas companies, enabled partly by its continued access to the international banking system, says a forthcoming United States report seen by Reuters. Kim Jong-un, or whatever his name is, has been moving around this. North Korea has been very, very slippery in trying to get caught and grabbed upon. They actually changed the name of their vessels. They have ways of getting into the international banking systems. So it was just as part of the whole kind of thing where they're mentioning all these particular, adversaries, Iran, Russia, China, whatnot. And then number 19, you can see, let's make sure we end this hearing with a bang. Make sure we can test the waters with more sanctions on U.S.'s biggest adversary, China. It's a quick minute video. You can show it. This was the last part of the whole friggin' thing, and they ended it with a bang.
Thank you for that. I think my time's about up. Mr. Lord, I'm going to ask you one more question. Do you think we should be adding China to the list of countries that we currently sanction, North Korea, Iran, Russia, Venezuela? And if so, how would you structure those sanctions?
So I think there are many differences we have with the Chinese and many activities they engage in, which I think are where sanctions can be impactful. I would not recommend putting in place essentially a comprehensive embargo like the U.S. has on Iran and Syria and North Korea and Cuba, et cetera, on China. I think for all sorts of different reasons, I think that would be a mistake. I think the targeted way, and it really comes up, I think the targeted way that both the Trump administration and the Biden administration are approaching sanctions towards China is prudent right now.
Great. Thank you.
There you have it, fam. Even we have some young warmongers in Congress too, as well, that want us to go after China more. That gentleman, Mr. Gonzalez, he didn't talk about anything about cryptos. He just was pretty much talking about the sanction list and how they can be used properly to make sure that we stop bad actors. But that's the thread, fam. I went over the whole thing. I listened to it several times. I obviously had a problem with it trying to get it loaded up Monday, and I was able to get it done by yesterday. But it's just intriguing because if you want to know where the policy is going to start coming from, you watch these hearings and you get an understanding of where the Congress is by these subcommittees who are in charge of talking about these issues of crypto sanctions, how they tie together. So to be continued. I'm going to be keeping an eye out, but there's the thread, fam. So
yeah. Oh, great.
That's it. Let's read some quick super rays. Jesse Evans, here's some cash for you too. Thank James. That's James Evans, not Jesse Evans. James Evans. Thank you, Big Game James. Here's boy Levendis is a new person. Thank you so much. Part 4 of To Hell and Back was deeply moving. The account of stimulus, simultaneous loss, sacrifice and kindness of a mother for her child was beautiful, truly transcendental. Thank you. Help me out here. Thank you, boy. Thank you so much. Part 5 will be tomorrow. I really appreciate it. I couldn't stop crying. I edited it, watched it, was in part of it. And every single time I watched it, it brought me to tears. But you just see what these women are going through. One that was Ray Ray. She hadn't been in trouble with the law until she was 42 years old. Just think about that. Never in trouble with the law. And then 42 years old. Boom. Life is turned upside down. Thank you for that Super Ray contribution. And thank you, Reeve Barker. Taylor Hudak reports John McAfee found dead in a prison cell after Spanish court approved extradition to the U.S. Wow. I did not know that.
We'll have to talk about that.
Roar Media, John McAfee dead by suicide.
Yeah, sure.
Wow. So they were going to... They're going to extradite him here to the United States, and he was found dead. He didn't even want to come here.
No, I mean, I wouldn't want to come either. But I mean, it's what's worse. Yeah, that's terrible.
It's terrible. That sucks.
Guys. Well, that leads us into our next section, right? We'll have to go into our next section. We'll just have Magnus standing by.
Do you want to do the? Should we just go into the New York mayor thing real quick?
Yeah, let's
go to slide 10, Oz, real quick. We're going to go over there, and we'll start there. We're just going to do this section before we get our guest in because we have somebody coming on. Fam, who do you want to be the New York mayor?
None of these people. They all suck.
Yes. Slide
Literally.
11. The New York primary election results. The race to become New York City's next mayor is one of the most consequential political contests in a generation. With the recovery of the nation's largest city at stake, the winner of the Democratic primary is likely to win the general election in November. Yeah, sure they are. With 13 Democrats on the ballot and the city using ranked choice voting for the first time, no one knows what to expect. 2 Republicans are also competing in a bitter campaign to become the face of their party in New York City. So you can see here the New York primary results. This is just a little small part of it. Andrew Yang, fam, your boy Yang Gang, finished fourth. But there's Eric Adams, who was the favorite here. Neoliberal establishment. Yeah. Maya Wiley, another one, was expected right there. Neo-progressives 1, 2, and Catherine Garcia was 3, and Andrew Yang is 4th. But here's the thing to understand. Number 13, slide, Oz. Don't expect a winner tonight, fam. Here's why, and this is just crazy. The vote count could take weeks. This is just enough. I mean, you were in Peru. They do it in one fucking day. The votes announced on Tuesday will include an will include only early in-person and election day ballots. Absentee ballots, which the Associated Press estimated to be around 15 to 20% of the total vote, can arrive at the Board of Elections up to 10 days after the elections. That is fucking ridiculous.
This is why I'm not for it. Like, I really, like, more and more time passes, I'm not for absentee ballots, guys. I'm sorry. Like, call me whatever you want, but unless you have a way to track them and you shorten the time that people have, because other countries, every other major country does not have all that shit. And we do it by design under the guise of democracy and blah, blah, blah. It's not democracy. It actually allows unfair and non-transparent elections.
Ranked choice voting is likely to determine the winner. The city's ranked choice voting system says that if no candidate receives a majority of the first choice ballots, the last place candidate is eliminated and their votes are reallocated round by round until only the two candidates remain. Learn more about ranked choice voting in New York City. But here's the great part. This is just crazy. The first ranked choice results are to be revealed next week, fam.
Yeah.
The city's Board of Election plans to release the first round of ranked choice results on Tuesday, June 29th. And it will release updated results once a week after that, as absentee ballots are counted. More complete results should arrive weekly through the week of July 12th. So it is the 21st. By July 12th, 21 days, 3 weeks from now, we'll have an idea of who won, fam.
Do you guys not see the problem with that?
Oh my God.
Do you guys not see an election should be as quick as possible? As quick as possible. They allowed ranked choice voting, but they put all these other stipulations that allow them to manipulate and maneuver elections. And if you are naive enough to think that they're not doing that, I'm sorry to tell you, that's exactly what they're doing. They're going to manipulate and choose whoever the fuck they want. That's what they do. That's what they will continue to do until useful idiots stop believing that you have an empire that is one of the most corrupt and empires that it goes around killing people all over the world. It's a death cult that somehow you have fair elections. Yeah. Get the fuck out of here.
I mean, 3 weeks, fam. I mean, where are those ballots going to be for 3 weeks? Where's the chain of custody? Are they going to be in the public site? Can you see them? Who's counting them?
Yeah.
How are they counting them?
That should
How
all
are they
be
doing this
public.
stuff?
We should all be seeing this unfold then, if it's going to take that long.
Who won? We'll let you know in 3 weeks, fam.
Yeah.
Primary day 2021. This is slide 14. Curtis Sliwa wins the Republican mayoral primary. Curtis Sliwa is the head of the Guardian Angels, the guys who run around with their red berets in New York. They were guys who used to be like vigilantes of sorts, stopping all the drug usage on the streets, whatnot. Guardian Angels founder Curtis Sliwa has won the Republican mayoral primary in New York City. Sliwa defeated the businessman. What was his name? Fernando Mateo. Ranked choice voting wasn't a factor because there were only two candidates in the race. So we know who the Republican is, and you can see there's Curtis Sliwa. This is number 15. Primary day 2021. He won the mayoral Republican primary. And that's just something to think about. Sliwa doesn't have much of a chance to win the November general election in a city where registered Democrats are outnumbered Republicans by 7-1. Former allies, the two Republicans, Sliwa and Mateo, traded personal insults and tried to shout over each other during a debate on Zoom. Sliwa is a radio host, fam, who still wears his red Guardian Angel beret when he appears in public. He got an endorsement from former Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who called him my great friend in a robocall to Republican voters. So it's going to be interesting, fam, to see if a Republican, Curtis Sliwa, who's somewhat of a populist mind or whatnot. I mean, he's known in New York. Like I said, I think he was a Democrat back in the days, or he was Democrat leaning, and now he is a Republican. He won last night by a 3-1 margin, almost 75% of the vote. So it's going to be interesting to see. But once again, he won't be able to. Right now, he should use this next 3 weeks to just make fun of the Democrats' process that they don't even know who they are, who's going to be running against me. They're doing this to delay with time and pick who they want. It's just a shoddy situation. It really does suck. But that is your mayoral update of New York.
It's the most consequential election in a generation. No, it's not. No, it's not. I'm sorry, but it doesn't fucking matter because they're going to dictate who the hell they want. Why do you think Nancy Pelosi's nephew is governor of California? Like, why do you Americans complain about the monarchy that you don't realize you have feudalism here too? It's neo-feudalism. It's the same fucking shit. You got the Bush family, the Clinton dynasty. It may not be a monarchy by name, but by all accounts, only a certain level of family members are the ones that are always in power. A certain level of wealth are the ones that are always in power. You like, come on. You think you changed from being a colony to the UK? No, we just switched places. Now this is the empire, and everybody else just does our bidding.
Thomas Hutchinson said New York City didn't get ranked choice voting until they figured out how they could rig it.
Exactly, Thomas.
Thank you, Thomas.
Exactly.
What a great thing. And Franklin Walbon Brown says, what are you talking about? That is super quick. Yeah, 3 weeks. Super quick. And we'll see what's going on. Guys, if you're on YouTube, get on over to the Rokfin, ROKFIN, sign up for free. Of course, if you got a few extra dollars, you can help out the Convo Couch. You can endorse us for $9.99 a month. You get all our premium content and anybody else's premium content on the platform for free as well, with just one payment of $9.99. So it's not free. You buy one, but you get all the other ones.
Well, it's free to sign up, but if you want to support us, and for premium content, then you can do that.
Do we have Magnus on the line yet?
Not yet. Okay. If he's not on yet, we might. I don't know. He's 2 minutes away. 2 minutes from 1:30. It's not a long section at all.
You want to do the?
Yeah, I mean, let's just go ahead and do it.
Go number 3, which is the section 2.
2.
U.S. seeks jurisdiction over all press spam, and the Philippines has fascism. So what's going on over here?
All right, I'm just gonna wait. There we go. All right, so you guys put it up. The FBI seized Press TV, right? I'm gonna read Richard's little tweet here. So the Press TV website, guys, has been seized by the U.S. government. He said, look at these gangsters. This is why America, so-called freedom of speech and democracy. The United States is a criminal org. They're scared of anti-imperialist and pro-Palestinian outlets, so they shut them down. Cowards. And this is a picture you'll see. This website has been seized. The domain presstv.com has been seized by the United States government, accordance with a seizure warrant issued pursuant to 18 USC, blah, blah, blah. And so USC, blah, 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 is part of a law enforcement action by the Bureau of Industry and Security, Office of Export Enforcement, and Federal Bureau of Investigation. So the FBI, the Department of Justice, the CIA, they want to impose jurisdiction over any press, right? And you know this because Julian Assange, who is an Australian citizen, is in the UK awaiting extradition for exposing U.S. war crimes. You know this. This is the U.S. has no jurisdiction, but they are imposing their jurisdiction onto this. And here is Misty. She said the United States is seeking global jurisdiction over journalism and information. It'd be cool if y'all could start caring about that horrifying fact. Free Assange. And this is what a lot of the Assange activists have been screaming about for a while now. They have been screaming about this because all these lefty idiots have been pretty much crying about the Proud Boys and crying about the Boogaloo Boys, which one of them we're going to talk, and we're going to get a ton of shit again for putting him on this show. But, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. Call me whatever you want. I don't care what you think of me. I will do what is fair. I will do what is truthful. I don't care who says it. Iran, what they say, that is a theocratic right-wing Press TV. When Richard was hired by Press TV, they're like, it's part of this radical Islamic fundamentalist. I don't give a shit what you think about their religion. You have radical Christian fundamentalists here. What is that? It doesn't fucking matter. What matters is that we don't have international jurisdiction as a country over in the press. And that's what the United States is doing. The same way they think they have jurisdiction over everybody else. They go to every other country, overthrow democratically elected leaders. The same way they do that is now they're trying to control the truth via the press, because they know that there is a rise in independent media. There is a rise in people telling the truth and anti-imperialist voices, and they don't want us to be here. They want to continue narrative management and narrative control and continue putting people asleep and continue turning people against each other. So we can't allow this. We can't sit silent on this, fam.
Yeah. Well, even Lee Camp put it up there. Breaking: U.S. has seized multiple news websites associated with other countries. This sets a horrifying precedent in which the U.S. shuts down the flow of information except for the U.S. approved propaganda. And I like what Misty had to say. It would really be, it would be cool if you would just be concerned about that. Like, this is horrifying, ladies and gentlemen. It's already horrifying that they were holding on to Julian Assange, who's not even an American citizen, okay? Who's never been, saying he's an Australian citizen. And they want jurisdiction around the world. They want their globalist ways to just make sure that that's the standard, that they get to put out the information, and any other opposing information you don't get to listen to, and that's that. So it really is just a shame. And it's sick, and I think people need to really get on it. And just finally, the last part of this too as well, when we talk about fascism, hey, fascism here, fascism there. What about the Philippines? This is a nice puppet government of the United States. I'll inject it into your butt, says the Philippines President Duterte. Threatens jail for vaccine deniers. Filipino president has been angered lately for his country's low vaccination rate and has threatened jail for people who refuse to get vaxxed up by the COVID-19, according to the PNN news agency. If you don't get vaccinated, I'll have you arrested, and then I'll inject you a vaccine into your buttocks. So let's just take a quick listen to the Philippine president, what he said. This is kind of scary shit, but hey, as the American goes, the other guys are going to take their cues. Here they are.
You choose. Get vaccinated, or I'll have you jailed. I'm telling you, those police cells are filthy and foul-smelling. Police are lazy at cleaning. That's where you'll be.
I will think it over very hard. Legally, of course.
But if you refuse, I will have you arrested.
That is in pursuance to a policy of our crisis of health issue.
You get vaccinated. Otherwise, I will order all the village heads to have a tally of all people who refuse to get vaccinated. Because if not, I will have them injected with ivermectin, which is intended for pigs.
Okay. Right. Well,
please inject them with ivermectin.
Please inject them with ivermectin.
Please.
Thank you so much. Please do that. But
Wow.
that's that. I mean, it's just fucking crazy, but that also has the spin on ivermectin that once again, they put this whole kind of spin on ivermectin when it's a good thing and stuff. But I think the Philippine president was talking to you, Magnus. Are you going to get vaccinated? Otherwise, you're going to get injected in your buttocks with ivermectin, buddy.
Maybe that's why they kicked my door in. They just had a vaccine syringe. They're trying to find me.
Yeah. They are.
How you doing, guys?
You crazy anti-vaxxer. So Magnus, I'm going to say hi to all of our haters who are probably watching this and are ready to clip it up. And,
You're welcome
hey
for
guys,
6 more
what's
months of content.
Hashtag Fash Fam.
Yeah.
So yeah, they can eat a bag of Richards. Okay. So Magnus, a few days ago, your government,
your government, Magnus.
My
your
government.
Your government came after you. They raided your apartment. The police raided your apartment, and we can pull up the tweet, but we've already kind of gone over it, but we wanted to hear your story because we don't know exactly what happened and why you were raided. So just give us the gist of what happened that day.
Okay, so I was at work, just kind of doing my normal thing, and my neighbor, which is one of the best sweethearts in the entire world, she texts me and she's like, "Hey, by the way, the cops are at your house." And then she's like, "Well, the cops are in your house." So I'm sitting there at work like, that's weird. Like you think if they had like a warrant for my arrest or something, they'd just come and grab me at work, or I was just confused. So I wasn't rushing to go home to get arrested. So I just kind of figured I would finish work and then I would go home. And then my neighbor texted me and said that they had left, that they were only in my apartment for about 12 minutes, that it was 4 uniformed officers, 1 plainclothes officer, and one unidentified woman sitting in an unmarked car. So I'm like, that's weird. And I go and I walk up, and I live stream this too, just in case I was coming home to get arrested. Like I wanted to be live. So I live streamed this by channel. And I walked up, and that door right there is propped closed because the hinge is all blown out. And my screen door is literally holding on by a single screw. So that's fun. I went in the house, and a bunch of stuff was moved around. My rifle was taken out of my rifle case and broken down and then put back together. All of my things that were in my rifle case were laid out on my desk, and nothing else was missing. Nothing else was screwed with. I searched all over to see if anything got left. I didn't find anything that got left. So I was like, that's weird. I didn't really know what to make of that. Like I expect to get raided in the middle of the night and arrested, but not this. You figured they'd take something or screw with something. So then I called my local police department about 2 days ago now, and they told me they had no record of police ever being called to my house. So I called the county sheriff's department. They said they had no record of police being called to my house. I called the state troopers, no record of anyone being at my house. So I have a lawyer, and I'm going to try to figure this out. But yeah, right now I have no idea why they were in my house or anything. And then the other part of this story is the next day, he's asked until the legal side of it's kind of figured out to be a little more quiet about it, but I can talk about the vague details. Another one of our guys got hit while he was in the hospital. He was in the hospital for treatment for a condition he has, and the FBI came up and showed him a warrant and told him that they were going through his house right now. And this guy is like even more tame than I am. He doesn't do any on the ground activism or anything. He's just like shares memes on Twitter. And they kicked his door in and apparently like took his computer and a bunch of other stuff, and he has no idea why. And then there was another individual just a day ago that got visited by the FBI. And then obviously, the news that just broke a couple hours ago of John McAfee didn't kill himself. So that was another thing that happened. So there just seems to be like this giant spread of stuff that's happening really quick all at once.
Yeah, it's crazy. I want to play the video of when you came home. Magnus, is there any pictures of the cops going into your house? Did your neighbors take any pictures and whatnot to make sure that we can show that they were there and stuff? But first, let's take this. Just describe what's going on. I guess this is the video of you coming home, correct?
Yeah, this is
you got
my
a red
immediate
thing in your
neighbor.
hand.
No, that's
All right.
my neighbor.
Oh, this is your neighbor. All right, so let's play this real quick.
In a car, he was driving a car, and it was somebody on the side that looked like a female on the side. I couldn't really tell if the car was black or gray because of dirt on it or whatever, so I couldn't really tell. See, the police is right here, and then
How many cops were with him? 2 cars, 1 car?
Two SUVs, yeah.
Oh boy.
One set here, the other set on the other side of the red car there. And then his car was on the other side of the police car. There was somebody else in this car. I'm not sure, like I said, if the car was black or light blue, because it could have looked like it was dusty or dirty or something like that. I couldn't really see because of the glare.
Was it SUV too, though? The car?
Looked like a regular car, small, medium.
Just grocery
car.
getter?
Huh?
Just like a grocery getter?
Yeah, something like that. And yeah. So yeah, you don't know who that is?
No idea.
Shut up.
No idea. And the landlord like hasn't contacted me, or they have keys and stuff like that. So like, why would the cop?
It wasn't nobody from it wasn't like Junior or none of those.
Yeah,
people.
no.
He was a stocky guy. He pulled out some kind of a paper. He went to his car. He grabbed his paper and came back downstairs. He showed the cop whatever. They didn't boom the door. At least I couldn't hear that. So the cops was like, "Please," and they went on.
My latch on my door is screwed up, and my screen door is all fucked up.
Oh, and you don't know who that is.
Nope. I mean, they didn't. Nothing's like a bunch of stuff in my house is like moved around, like not a lot of stuff, but there's nothing missing. At least I only looked for like a second. I haven't dug around. I'm gonna go through like all my.
But if you're not in any trouble from the police, I'd ask the police.
Yeah.
That's breaking and entering.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if it was like a wrong house thing or like what. I have no idea. But
That's Magnus coming home to not know what the hell was frigging going on. So go ahead, fam.
Okay, so was there any sign that this was the FBI or a higher department?
I mean, besides those two plainclothes people, which like they could be a detective maybe, or they could be like a Fed,
Right.
who knows? There's nothing. Like there wasn't a warrant left on my door. There was no paperwork left in the house, and like, obviously you can't just call the FBI and be like, "Hey, were you in my house?" So right now, I'm just leaving it up to my lawyer to try to like dig around and figure out what's happening.
Yeah.
It's funny that this is just coming out right after Biden's domestic terror, freaking bill or whatnot. I mean, obviously you connect the dots, and this is really scary. I mean, we were just talking, we were looking over a sanctions hearing and saying, wow, how scary that is, the rhetoric. But this is even more scarier right now. What are you doing to combat this, Magnus? Because obviously you don't know who it is yet. We can assume it's the FBI. But who knows if they're going to constantly be coming to your place or your place of work?
They're obviously watching him.
Yeah, I mean, their obviously eyes are on you. So what are you going to do to combat this?
Yeah, and I mean, stuff like this isn't even unprecedented. If you talk to like Susie from like the whole Assange campaign, and then there's been a few historical cases in the last couple years of the FBI going after people and like rooting through their garbage in the middle of the night and like going in and out of their house like randomly just to like harass people and drive people crazy to try to get them to like either slip up or become informants. So it's definitely not above them that they could just be fucking with me, that they could have just booted my door to be like, hey, just so you know, because, like I live in a very isolated area. There's no street cameras. There's no nothing. I have one neighbor, so they could easily kind of do this stuff. But right now, I'm just waiting on a bug sweeper that's getting mailed to me to go through my house to see if they left anything. And other than that, I guess just get cameras on the house and wait and see if they come back. I mean, I've obviously removed myself from like any kind of chats with other people and like wiped my phone and toasted my hard drive on my computer and did like everything I could to make sure that they're not screwing with me. But otherwise, what can you do? Like that's the kind of the question. What can you do when they target you?
It's scary, and it's not a coincidence that one of your friends got hit in the hospital. I'm sorry, fam.
Yeah, no, and this is like we mentioned, the Biden's the DNI files released by the government, like on who is going to be a domestic terrorist. It's literally everybody, like animal rights activists, militia groups, well, anybody that's anti-government or anti-capitalist, libertarians, anybody. Like it's just ridiculous.
The abortion one cracks me up because it's like, are you too pro-abortion or too anti-abortion? Straight to jail. Like, like it's ridiculous.
Don't even talk about it, I guess.
Veganism.
Yeah, animal rights, cruelty, like if you think hurting animals, perceived hurt of animals is like, what the fuck? Like, oh my God. But you put up this whole thing, and I don't have it with me, but the Batman comic, and then you've put up other things. You said that Law and Order has mentioned you. Tell us how many comics and shows have literally portrayed you, because I am baffled by this. This is crazy to me.
Okay, so the first people that did it was South Park, and this was kind of more like a tongue-in-cheek sort of thing of their episode about January 6th, where it has like all the rednecks sitting in a basement planning to storm the Capitol. There's a bunch of guys in the background that are wearing Hawaiian shirts. So it's like, that was the first reference. And as people that were in DC, I'm sure you can protest, there wasn't people running around DC with Hawaiian shirts on January 6th. So that was kind of the first element of slander. And then after that, Law and Order did an episode where it was both against us and Antifa, where like the whole plot was like people were setting off car bombs at protests, and they were trying to figure out whether it was Antifa or Boogaloos. And it's hilarious because there's such a memeable line in that episode where they're going through forensics, and they're like, well, this doesn't look like an improvised Boogaloo device, which is the funniest fucking thing I'd ever heard. And then January 1st, DC Comics released a comic where that was about us, where we were apparently a far right racist anarchists, which, by the way, if you've noticed how many times they've tried to tie anarchism and racism together over the last couple of years, when they're calling all the Trump supporters in the Capitol racist anarchists and like white supremacist anarchists and all these, they combining these terms, and that we had kidnapped Batman and kidnapped police, and that we were all high on meth and ex-military and all this other shit, and we used to work for the Penguin, and just a bunch of cringe propaganda. And it's like,
I knew you used to work for the Penguin. There was
makes-
something about you, Magnus. You son of a
Yeah,
beeswax.
And honestly, props to the DC people, because they're the ones that actually spelt the name right for the first time. So like, obviously that guy was well intentioned, but also like in that very comic, which is, this is peak shit lib. They refer to people that are anti-police or people that defend themselves from the police as fascists, which is hilarious. Like, I don't even know how you put your brain. How dare you oppose the cops, you fascist?
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the situation, kind of just really quickly. What has been your treatment, on from the online left versus the online right? Just kind of curious, really, to tell you the truth, because I've been like, I don't know if you saw this. I made a comment about the whole Sam Cedar thing, and me and Matt Binder got into it. We're gonna have a debate next week, but we're gonna also talk about the Boogaloo Boys, pretty much. So tell us your treatment when it comes to the online left versus the online right, because when I was with you in DC, I was able to get this whole Boogaloo 101 kind of like, what's going on, and you explained so much, and it was so intriguing to me. But go ahead and tell us about your treatment.
It's actually identical, which is the best part of, like, the right makes up like a whole bunch of things of like the current conspiracy is that the entire Boogaloo movement is we're rebranded Antifa that's trying to infiltrate the right. So where have you heard that one before? So like the conspiracies mirror each other of like of just that we're bad actors, that we don't believe anything that we believe, that we're totally fake, that like we're some form of operation from the FBI or the right wing or the left wing. Like it's wild conspiracies, which it's almost flattering that they think that we're like as powerful and competent as they try to sell us as, when in reality we're like just like a bunch of dorks, which is great, which is what I love about the movement. So it's hilarious of that. Like, I'm simultaneously some George Soros funded Chinese anti-fascist operation, and then also some like elaborate Lincoln Project thing to tear down Trump, while also being some fascists attempting to infiltrate the left-wing progressive movements, and also a terrorist trying to get BLM labeled an extremist organization. Like, there's the conspiracies go in like every single direction. It's
covering
so
all
crazy.
bases.
Yeah. When you tell the truth, or when you're very independent minded and you don't play team sports, everybody hates you. And like, we've experienced that too. And it's like, I am on the left, and I always say that, but I'm also very anti-authoritarian. And there is a segment of the left that is extremely authoritarian. There's a segment on the right that's extremely authoritarian. So I think like the divides right now are more anarchists versus authoritarian. And I say anarchists because most people don't understand the term anarchy and what it means. They have this idea that it means lawlessness and just everybody running around crazy with a machete. Like, that's what they think of when they see anarchy, and that's not what it is. And so like, it's just interesting to me because I've been seeing so many articles against Boogaloo Boys, but particularly focusing on you, the enemy of my enemy is still a fascist, and all these articles like naming you. And I just want to reiterate, Magnus, from what I've seen on the ground, from ourselves, from Ford Fisher, and from you, the Boogaloo Boys aren't a monolith, and they keep bringing up specific people that are, said something or other positive of a Proud Boy or whatever, and they keep saying, see, the Boogaloo Boys are this, and they have chats of whatever else that they got, and they use this to say, see, these people, don't trust them. Tell the audience once again, the Boogaloo Boys, right? Are they a monolithic group?
No, not at all. And they try to paint me as some kind of leader of it or something. And I have no control over these men, or especially not the women. I definitely have no control over them. They're going to do whatever they want to do. And it's just ridiculous to me that like, I had this whole tweet where I'm like, well, here's all of the documentation and evidence that every single main public account with 30,000 followers on Facebook with like 10,000 people in the Discord and everything, of us explicitly getting into fights with people, yelling at people that they're not welcome to bring bigotry in here. They're not welcome to do anything stupid, that we don't accept racism. I can show all these posts and then they'll go, well, oh, that's just words. So then it's like, okay, well, then I show, which you've showed on the show, I show just, hundreds of hours of documentation of us like putting what we believe into practice on the ground and video evidence of it. And then they say, well, that's just performative. And I'm like, okay, well, if that's my evidence, so what's your evidence of that we're this giant racist monolith? And it's like, well, here's a leaked Discord chat between 4 dudes on the West Coast a year and a half ago. And it's like, okay, I thought those were just words. And they're like, well, my words matter. Your words don't mean anything. It's like, okay, I see where we're going on here. Like, this is just militant tribalism. And like the movement's so diverse to where like you have like homesteader type dudes that will never go to an event and don't even really care about politics. It's more of like a kind of social club for them. And then you have other people that exclusively go to right-wing events, whether it be like Second Amendment thing or free speech or lockdown events. And then you have people on the other side that only go to Black Lives Matter protests or only go to anti-ICE protests. Like, it's a big spread. And that's the whole reason a lot of people got attracted to this movement, was that ability to be like, hey, like, we have all this in common, but I'm going to do this over here and you're not going to get mad at me for doing that. And I'm going to do this over here and we can just be cool. We can fight the same kind of issues in parallel directions and not step on each other's toes, which, in 2020 and 2021, that's not welcome. Like nobody can fight parallel. Everyone has to be on the same track, So it's always just been like ridiculous to me. And I brought up the very first conversation I ever had of like, if they pull some random dude off a Telegram chat that's saying like some racist things, it's like, well, I didn't know about that guy. I have no way to know about that guy because we were banned off of everything. Like I honestly go to like the anti-fascist Twitter accounts that are always like, they're so good at researching and everything. And I'm like, just help me, dude. Like, help me find these people. Like you could just send this directly to me and I'll give you all the information you need to know on like people that are actually legit scumbags. Like, instead of using it as a gotcha against me of like, oh, we found this one asshole that runs a page on some obscure website with 15 people that subscribe to it, and then throwing it all over Twitter and be like, it's throwing all over Twitter and be like, see proof that they're bad people. It's like, no, just tell me that person exists. And then I'll have the entire Twitter of everyone in the movement be like, yeah, fuck that guy. Like, that's all it takes,
When you were explaining stuff to me about the Boogaloo Boys, and we were talking about the Northwest, like Washington, the Boogaloo Boys there, and you said you have no clue what they're doing. There's no attachment to them whatsoever. So is it okay to say that you're not a monolithic group, but people still claim that you have like one basic founding ideology that you follow, and that's the problem with the Boogaloo Boys? Is there one basic founding ideology that you guys all follow, which makes you guys bad?
I mean, not really. Like the pure basic thing that started all of this was just like militant anti-government. Like, it's just no theory, all praxis anarchism is what I've kind of described it as. It's like, it's just a bunch of people that were just sick and fed up of the government. And in the beginning, that blew up into like a million different directions, to where you had people like, before we kind of consolidated onto the more anarchist side. In the beginning, you did have like right-wing dudes that thought fighting the government meant supporting Trump. And then you also had like way more progressive people that thought fighting the government was supporting Bernie Sanders. And then, yes, I admit it fully and openly, there was a lot of people that were in the very beginning of this had like kind of I wouldn't say like white supremacist, but kind of the like Charlie Kirk, like nationalism thing, like the racial undertones, but not like explicitly like neo-Nazi shit. There was people in the beginning that had that. And it took a lot of months of banning people and getting into giant arguments and multiple splits into the movement before most of those people fucked off. Because in the beginning, it was literally just a bunch of guys got together on the internet and were like, hey, we should like fight the government. And that attracted all sorts of people to that. I mean, like, there was even, like Republican conservative types that thought they were on the right side of the history in the movement. And it took like a while for us in the beginning, the bigger people, to be like, no, this is what we mean by that. Like, we don't mean fight the government, elect a Republican. Like, that's not what we're talking about. And there was giant shitstorms about it. I even, I'm going to post some stuff later of like people that were names that might surprise you that were kind of bigger in the whole like anti-SJW Twitter thing that happened like a year or two ago, that whole culture that were like, I thought the Boogaloo Boys were so cool, but I go on there and it's just a bunch of cringe racial politics and blah, blah, blah. And they're supporting BLM and they're throwing giant temper tantrums because they thought we were some based right-wing group, which we never were. So it's like,
yeah. Well, that's still the label.
I compare it a lot to Antifa, of how Antifa, what they're going through right now, of how like it was like a far left, like militant anti-government group, and then up towards the election, you had a bunch of college shit libs throw on black hoodies and think they were fighting the power, and now they're having to deal with the fact that like their popularity in the media brought a bunch of people who didn't understand what the whole fucking point was, and now you're gonna have to deal with that.
And they got co-opted. Yeah. The FBI is infiltrating all these movements, to be honest. And I just, as we wrap this up, Magnus, two things I want to go over. One is the this sheet that came out to The Intercept, this trainee guide for the military, pretty much assessing that socialists, anarchists, and neo-Nazis represent terrorist ideological category. And they're asking them, which terrorist ideology category do these people represent? They're all these people that have been fighting against each other. You got the Bernie left progressives that think every 75 million Trump supporters are neo-Nazis. You got the anarchists, the types like Boogaloo Boys. You got all these people. Then you got the Proud Boys. All these people are being lumped into one category and being named terrorists. And instead, they're fighting amongst each other as the state agencies are doing their bidding, as classifying all of us as potential DVEs. Your thoughts on that, and your thoughts on I heard you have an upcoming parade march.
Yeah. So it's really interesting too, because something I've noticed, and as an anarchist, I have to keep bringing this up to people, is that during the 4 years in Trump, when they were talking about radical groups, they never once used the word anarchist. Because like, obviously, like when it comes to the media and stuff like that, they didn't want to come out really hard against like the anti-fascist groups or like black anarchists that might be in like the Panther Party or something like that. So they never used that word. But the moment Biden got elected, every single one of these anarchists. And it's like, hey, dude, like all those people in Portland that were riding against Trump, that's you. Because a lot of you are anarchists. Like, and they never included that until Biden got elected, because you're no longer useful to the establishment, and now they're going to come and kill you.
Oh yeah,
like that's how they're coming across.
That's what it is.
And I posted a video that my friend leaked out of a military training. He's in the Navy and he's an officer, and he sent me this, and it was a picture of domestic extremism in America. It was like a PowerPoint, and they had a picture of a bunch of different groups, and it had actual neo-Nazis, it had Black Panthers, it had anti-fascists, it had I forget their name, but it's a LGBT group on there. It had like Pepe, it had like the 3%ers, it had Oath Keepers. So it's like literally everybody is on this. And it's like, this is the domestic terrorists in America. And it's like, oh, so every single group that was protesting over the last year, that's what you're saying. And that's top brass military. That's what they're teaching them. So it's like, I would love to see if we could get a quote unquote good cop to like leak what they're training the police right now of like what to look for and what are the extremist groups, So it's crazy, but I mean, it's nothing new to people like us. Like, we've all been talking, I know you guys have been talking about how they view the world in reality. They're just finally admitting to it, which, is refreshing in a way, and then, September 11th, we announced it. We're trying to do a post-partisan peace march in Washington, D.C. We're calling it End the Damn Wars March. And we're essentially just trying to recreate what happened in 2003, where you had a whole bunch of progressive groups and the Green Party and the Libertarian Party and even some conservatives all marched in D.C. in a giant, like, single group to like try to end everything that was going on in Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya, and like the Ron Paul movement and Occupy and all these kind of groups were together in on it. And you've noticed there hasn't been anything like that since 2003. Right. There's been no big anti-war anything since like 2003.
Yeah.
So we're just trying. Trying to recreate that, and we picked a perfect time because it's either 20th or 30th anniversary of September 11th. So it's kind of going to the recurring the recurring theme of be like, hey guys, this is how long we've been doing this and it's still not working. Okay, maybe we could stop.
Yeah.
Crazy idea.
I think it's the 21st anniversary of Afghanistan. They're 21 years in Afghanistan, I think, too, as well. September 11th is the day that they're supposed to pull out. I don't know how people really bought this. They were supposed to be pulled out in March, and he extended the date, and everybody was like, "Oh, Biden, he's going to be a champion of pulling people out of Afghanistan." It's like they were already set to come out.
Talking about this. Nobody's talking about this, but the Taliban's been attacking the Afghan military. They broke the ceasefire because we broke the agreement. Like there's you can look up videos of Afghan National Guard surrendering in the thousands to the Taliban because the Taliban are pissed off because Joe Biden fucking pushed back our withdrawal to have a symbolic victory on September 11th, I guess. But in reality, it was probably just to bait the Taliban into attacking to excuse staying there for another 20 fucking years.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, they want to manufacture consent. They extended the time. Now the Taliban's going to strike. They're going to say, look what they're doing. And they're going to probably commit more troops to a guy who was the first to push for the surge in Afghanistan to say, I'm the guy who was against it. Like, no, it's not. We have receipts, asshole. You were for it before you were against it. So it's just crazy. And I wish you nothing but the best of luck out there. In your
Please
September
take care of yourself
March.
too. And just keep us posted on anytime that happens. We will have you on to discuss. We have no problem. And I'm glad that you're trying to work on this whole unity thing. They can call it whatever they want, red, brown, whatever the hell it is. Anti-imperialism is something we need to all stand against, and the working class needs to unite. And if you're part of the working class, I'm not going to ask you what is the dynamics of your political. What do you believe in? Are you for Medicare for all? If you're not, like, get away. Like, and that's the thing. Like, even with Medicare for all, while I fight for it and I'm so for it, and I'm going to attend marches for it and all of the stuff, it's not going to change who controls things. And that's what we have to look up to. We have to understand that the state agencies are in control. So Magnus, thank you for coming on. Take care of yourself. We appreciate you.
And if you're wondering what the police officers are looking for now, Magnus, they're looking for guys who wear Hawaiian shirts, long beards, carrying rainbow flags with guns. So that's what they're up to today. So watch yourself out there, pal.
That's what it is. I appreciate you, fam. You'll have a good one.
We love you, Magnus. You have a great one. Our friend Magnus.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. It's not fair that everybody's getting raided now. I mean, he's one of many people, like you mentioned. It's scary times. I don't think people realize how scary times it is.
Fam, it's okay to raid a fascist's house because that's what they're doing is wrong. So you shouldn't be standing or supporting right-wing militias, far-right militias here in America.
Yeah, whatever, fam.
Yeah. Prime Cat, thank you so much for the Super Rate contribution. Almost 90 people on Rokfin. That is awesome. We are at the end of times. Here's a donation to the cause of sanity.
It's like the stand.
I don't know, Prime Cat. I don't know if we can find any sanity, but thank you for the Super Rate contribution. It's always appreciated. Chris Foster jumping to Rokfin as requested, fam. Thank you, Chris Foster. And here he is, Trey Wright. Love all the truth-telling motherfuckers. Pasta looking good. Thank you. Fee looking sexy. She is. Much respect for you, too, and we love you, too, as well. Trey Wright, you are amazing. And thank you all to all the people who jumped on over to the Rokfin, ROKFIN. We still have 300 people almost on the YouTubes. That's plenty of people to get on over to the Rokfin. Please do so. Hit the thumbs up, not the thumbs down, so we know who the trolls are. So far, no trolls today in the Rokfin. Let me see how many we got in the YouTube. We got one troll in the YouTube today, so at least we have one troll with us. Fam. The next section is going to be fun. I don't have my Defund the Pentagon shirt. Where you at, Tsunami? You around? Can we hear you?
I'm sure he's coming.
Sue? Johnny Sue, where are you?
Guys, we obviously have a very hefty show today, but we have talked about, of course, the police raids along with Biden's and the military's targeting of anarchists, socialists, communists, what we warned you about. We also talked about the sanctions. And now we're going to focus on the Pentagon, because the Pentagon, guys, is when you're talking about defund the police and abolition of police, you're never going to get that when you don't pay attention to the foreign policy aspect, the state agencies, the military industrial complex, and the national security apparatus that has worked and now is merging with the technocratic side of the corporations in order to just crack down not only on the ground via anti-protest bills, but also via the internet, via censoring the free press. That's another thing we've talked about. The reason we're so focused on these subjects right now is because for a long time we've been getting warnings about it, and people completely put these things aside, focusing on social issues. And one of the things that America has done is, unfortunately, put too much of a focus on symbolic gestures instead of the very things that are the fabric of what has been perceived as a free society in America. We are losing our right to free speech, our right to the Second Amendment. We're losing our right to freedom of the press. We're losing our rights to having your rights read. There's warrantless seizures, warrantless searches that are happening now. Those are the fundamental rights as an American, if you want to be patriotic, and all of those are out the window. And you can't pick and choose when you fight for those, depending on the ideology that you fall into. And that's what we're trying to point out here. The Pentagon is behind a lot of this. So there was a resolution introduced in the House, the Defund the Pentagon Resolution. And so Jonny is going to come on and go over that. So
where's Jonny?
Where's
They
Jonny?
kidnapped Jonny Tsunami.
Where's Jonny?
Jonny! He's there. He's there. He's there. We got him. Let's bring him on in, Oz.
There we go. Say something.
Hey, Jonny Tsunami,
Okay,
ladies
great.
and gentlemen. How you doing, buddy?
Okay. Good, good. It's been a fantastic show so far. Really interesting. Real quick, I mean, apart from the topic that we're about to discuss, there's a so John McAfee just died, right? So
yeah,
in jail. On his Instagram, just like 30 minutes ago, it was a Q was posted on his Instagram.
What?
Oh no, here come the QAnoners.
So I'm like, what the fuck is that? So I don't know. I took a screenshot of it, but it's on Instagram right now.
We'll talk more about that Friday, I guess.
Oh my lord, yeah.
Because there's already so many theories. He didn't kill himself. All these things happening. We don't know. That's the thing. We don't know anything at this time. But
apparently, Slow News Day had him on, and he had sentiments that saying that I'm not going to whack myself, right? So.
Wow. Well, we'll have to get Steve on too to talk about that stuff. Guys, this is like one thing after another right now happening, Jonny, right? Like so many things are happening right now. So give us your breakdown of the Pentagon, because this is very important. I think this legislation that usually goes through people's heads. There's so much that they're passing while they put out, AOC, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Sam Cedar, this idiot over here. Like these idiots focus on all of that because that gets you the most clicks, that gets you the most everything. But really, what's happening right now in front of us is really scary.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird, interesting news. I mean, there's a lot of shit going on in the world right now, but I think this resolution that I found last night is pretty interesting. I think it's a good first step. So about a week ago, HRES 476, you can see it on the screen, was introduced into the House on June 15, 2021. It's called Expressing the Sense of the House of Representatives Regarding Wasteful Pentagon Spending and Supporting Cuts to the Bloated Defense Budget. So the title is, you see it there. It was introduced by Representative Barbara Lee. She's a Democrat from California, and it was co-sponsored by Jan Schakowsky, Democrat of Illinois. You can go to the next slide there, Oz. There's Barbara Lee. It was introduced by her. And then Jan Schakowsky and Jared Huffman. I want to put the faces on the screen because I feel like it's really interesting, so you guys know what so we have a face to the legislation, right? They co-sponsored it. So Jan Schakowsky and Jared Huffman, also Ilhan Omar, from Minnesota, and Mark DeSaulnier. So I just wanted to show all of that to y'all. And then to reiterate a point before I get into this resolution, because I'm going to read a lot of it. We've talked about it before about how resolutions are almost kind of meaningless. They're like they're just like statements, right? And they're not really any type of law or anything like that. So I actually have the definition of what a simple resolution is. A simple resolution, H-res or S-res, is a proposal that addresses matters entirely within the prerogative of one chamber or the other. It requires neither the approval or of the other chamber nor the signature of the president, and it doesn't have the force of law. Simple resolutions concern the rules of one chamber or express the sentiments of a single chamber. So most resolutions are about condolences or deceased family members of Congress, or somebody they want to recognize and stuff. Some are about stances on issues, though, and this is one of those. So before I go over, I just want to emphasize that I expect to see more after this, and I think this is a decent first step in this particular resolution, because there are so many things in here in this resolution that I had no idea about in regards to the Pentagon and the Department of Defense. They laid out all these facts. So let's expose their ass, okay?
Yeah.
So Oz, if you can actually click on the link. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, I just want to point out that Barbara Lee was the only congressional member to vote against the AUMF. So the fact that it's coming from a person like Barbara Lee is not a surprise. This is way long overdue, though, too, Johnny. I want to point it out that like they're doing this now. We've been talking about the Pentagon budget being bloated for so long. But please continue.
It is way overdue, Pastor. You're absolutely right. It begins with this sentence: expressing the sense of the House of Representatives regarding wasteful Pentagon spending and supporting cuts to the bloated defense budget. It then goes on to list a lot of damning reasons of why this resolution should pass. And I hope a further bill will be passed, right? So here's some big points that stood out to me. So I'm going to read it. It says, whereas Pentagon spending since 9/11 adjusted for inflation has increased by almost 50%, whereas the United States has spent and obligated an estimated $6.4 trillion on military operations since 9/11, 2001, and has been at war constantly since then. Whereas the Pentagon's budget in fiscal year 2021 totaled $740.5 billion, including for base and overseas contingency operations. I'm going to be calling those OCOs as we go along. Whereas while Pentagon spending continues to rise, spending on diplomacy has stalled or been reduced, resulting in an over-reliance on our military action and an insufficient use of diplomatic and other non-military tools. I thought that was pretty important to put in there because it's kind of saying we're over-bloated in the budget, and when we can, use diplomatic and non-military tools. So that was important. Whereas only 1/3 of discretionary spending is available for important domestic priorities that help reduce poverty and inequality, including public health, education, housing, energy, diplomacy, and others. Whereas the Pentagon failed in its first ever agency-wide audit in November 2018. So I had no idea about that, that they failed an audit in 2018. Whereas the Department of Defense spent nearly $1 billion in activities related to that audit, to that 2018 audit, and achieving an agency-wide audit could take years if it is ever to achieve one, let alone pass. Whereas the audit revealed significant technological systems, security, and organizational deficiencies in the Department of Defense's financial management systems. Whereas the Pentagon's first audit, that was the 2018 audit, was the first audit that occurred nearly 30 years after the passage of the Chief Financial Officers Act of 1990, which established a requirement for annual audits of financial statements for federal agencies. So that was the first audit since 1990, and they should have been doing those audits since 1990 annually. You know what I'm saying?
Every year.
So that's something I had no idea about. Whereas the coronavirus pandemic has made clear that the Pentagon spending has not kept us safe from the major drivers of insecurity we face in the 21st century. The super expensive Pentagon did nothing to help us for COVID. Good point to make, I thought. Whereas in fiscal year 2020, $10.5 billion was appropriated to the Pentagon in the CARES Act above its regular fiscal year appropriations for a total of $756.5 billion in fiscal year 2020, whereas the cost of a single F-35 made by Lockheed Martin could have purchased over 2,800 ventilators to respond to COVID-19. For all those people who believe that more ventilators could help, this is a good point to make. Although y'all already know our stance on treatments for COVID, and I'm not going to get into that. Whereas the Pentagon continues to reveal high levels of waste and fraud, including, for example, and then they list all these reasons. The Pentagon diverted $1 billion in funds intended for personal protective equipment to prevent the spread of COVID for defense contractors to produce jet engine parts, body armor, and dress uniforms. So they diverted $1 billion for masks to other stuff. The Pentagon awarded a $7 million cloud computing contract to a one-person company, which is interesting. I'm kind of curious about what company that is. The Defense Logistics Agency lost track of $800 million in construction projects. In 2019, the Pentagon spent $4.6 million on crab and lobster and an end-of-the-year spree.
How much?
$4.6 million on crab and lobster.
Well, that must have been a hell of a crab and lobster fest. Jesus Christmas.
Yeah, what, like each lobster place, like what, like $12, $20? I don't know.
Well, it was the party, Johnny. You know, they had little lobster things hanging on
like
the wall,
$50,
and, you know,
like $60.
Yeah, but they had little mini lobster dolls and stuff on the tables that you could
but they
take
get it
home.
wholesale, fam.
And
They're not paying retail. This is the Pentagon we're talking about. Okay.
Yeah.
The Department of Defense Inspector General found the Pentagon had to spend $300 million to repair defective spare parts for the $1.4 trillion F-35 Joint Strike Fighter program. So that's a fuck ton of money.
Yeah.
In fiscal year 2020, the DoD made $5 billion in improper payments. $5 billion. Whereas, okay, so that's the list there. And then whereas the military budget accounts for more than half of all discretionary spending.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I mean, that's most of our discretionary spending is going into the military. Whereas every hour, taxpayers are paying $32.08 million for the total cost of wars since 2001. And these endless wars have not made Americans safer or brought democracy or stability to the Middle East. Indeed, they have further destabilized the region and show no sign of actually ending or achieving any of the long ago stated goals. We've talked about this, you know? It's a good point to make. The other thing that we've talked about is whereas interviews with senior military leaders and other senior officials showed many believed the war in Afghanistan to be unwinnable and knowingly misled the public for years. That's something we've talked about on the Convo Couch. Whereas in addition to defense-based spending in fiscal year 2021, Congress provided $69 billion for defense, OCO, which has enabled continuing military actions and wars in several countries without specific congressional authorization and many almost hidden from the American people. So I want to clarify what this OCO is, the Overseas Contingency Operations. I didn't know about this. OCO funding is originally like extra funding, and it's to handle conflicts that were assumed to be temporary and had uncertain costs. However, as the conflicts became protracted and their costs became more predictable, the use of OCO funding nonetheless has persisted. Ideally, funding for national priorities would be appropriated through a regular budget process, but OCO funding has remained significant over time, comprising a major part of our overall annual budget. So it's just an extra wad of cash for the Department of Defense that didn't exist before. And it's only the original reasons for why it was supposed to be used is not the way they're using it now. Whereas the DoD abused emergency powers to transfer approximately $10 billion in funds to build an unnecessary and immoral wall at the southern border. So, you get that in there. The Pentagon helped fund that, I'm sure, in any administration, right? Whereas spending on sustaining and modernizing the excessively large United States nuclear arsenal is projected by Congressional Budget Office at nearly $500 billion between fiscal years 2019 and 2028. So they've included the arsenal of nukes in this resolution, whereas the United States spends more on defense spending than the next 7 countries in the world, including China, Saudi Arabia, Russia, the UK, India, France, and Japan combined. And we've talked about this. We've shown this meme. We've shown it. It's crazy that they have this in the resolution. Whereas despite concerns about depriving the troops of funding in 2019, half the military budget went directly to military manufacturing corporations whose top 5 CEOs in 2018 averaged $22 million in salaries, while 15.3% members of the armed forces serving on active duty and their families reported they were food insecure. So, a lot of the times, some politicians make the argument that, we don't want to cut military spending, or we don't want to cut military funding because the troops will be affected. But this part in this resolution is pointing out the fact that that's not true, that all these CEOs are making that money. They're making $22 million in salaries, and these active duty, they're working class as well, that they're on food insecure. They're not funding the army here. We're not funding the people there.
The troops.
Whereas
we're not funding the actual troops. Yeah. We're not funding them.
Yeah.
We're not giving them raises. We're not taking care of them when they come home. We're not paying for their medical bills. It's disgusting because the money does go, and you just pointed it out, Johnny, that it goes right into the CEO's pockets of these defense contractors. Half of that money goes into their pockets.
Absolutely. Whereas any spending cuts to the Pentagon could be reinvested in other important domestic priorities to help reduce poverty and increase economic opportunity in communities across the country. Defund, this is a defund and reinvest into the people. This is what this statement is saying. Big deal that this language is even in here, is in my opinion. This is all the stuff that we talk about. Defund the Pentagon, reinvest it into the people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Can I say something though real quick about it? It's like,
real quick,
this is great that they're listing out all this stuff, right? They're listing out all this stuff. They're giving you detail of what's going on, but you're a little bit late to the party. As we know, who was in charge of this budget was Adam Smith of Washington, Oz's good friend over there, who was actually in charge of making sure that this budget was managed properly and stuff. But why didn't they raise those concerns then when they were making this budget? Why did they all just keep quiet about it? Never call a press conference, never have a resolution. This is a little bit too late. It's like a giant virtue signal. And I also want to point out that inside that goddamn fucking audit, billions of dollars were not explained what happened, what the Pentagon did with that money. So we don't know. They just took that money and they did whatever they want with it. This was in 2019. And remember, we made the joke like, fam, I'm looking for $20 billion under the couch. We lost it somewhere. Where did the Pentagon put it? It's just ridiculous. And it's just a little bit too late with this shit. They should have been having press conferences when they were doing this bill. They should have called out people and talked about what they're spending on this bill when it happened, not a resolution now, because guess what's coming next year? Another bill, right? And are they going to wait a little bit late and say we should have a resolution to talk against it? No, talk against it when it's being produced. Talk against it when they're writing that bill. Talk against who's working on that bill, because those those Democrats that are all for this, like Adam Smith, need to be called the fuck out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why I said in the beginning, I want to see more. But let me finish up, and then we can talk a little bit more about this. Whereas the Pentagon could significantly decrease its spending by, so here they go on to list directly, lists of actions that could be taken to decrease the budget of the Pentagon. This, so it says, number one, eliminating war funding absorbed into the base budget upon the closure of the Overseas Contingency Operations, the OCO account. So they want to close that account. That's one of the things they list as an action. 2, closing 60% of foreign bases and saving $90 billion. 60% of foreign, this shit's not going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. But they're calling in this resolution for closing to 60% of foreign bases, and it'd save $90 billion. Ending wars and war funding and saving $66 billion. Yeah, let's see that. Cutting unnecessary weapons that are obsolete, excessive, and dangerous, and saving $57.9 billion. Cutting military overhead by 15% and saving $38 billion. Cutting private service contracting by 15% and saving $26 billion. Eliminating the redundant and wasteful Space Force and saving $15.2 billion. Yeah, so Biden hasn't eliminated that yet, right? Wasn't he talking shit about it?
Yeah.
Ending use it or lose it contract spending and saving $18 billion. Freezing operations and maintenance budget levels and saving $6 billion. And number 10, completing President Biden's announced plans to withdraw all U.S. troops from Afghanistan by September 11th, 2021, and reducing spending accordingly. And those are some actions that in this resolution, they kind of list out that could be taken. Of course, again, it's a resolution, so it's not saying that this will happen, right? So resolved that it is the sense of the House of Representatives that more money to the Pentagon does not buy us more security. Okay, so they're writing their summary now. Okay, I agree. More money to the Pentagon does not buy us more security. 2, Congress intends to reduce defense waste, increase transparency, and reduce or eliminate poor management practices at the DoD. So more transparency, I'm down with that. 3, Congress can and should make significant cuts to the budget of the Pentagon while simultaneously improving support for the members of the armed forces by reducing unnecessary spending and reinvesting in our troops. So that is good. Reinvest in actually reinvest in the troops. And I hope, for PTSD recovery and health services. 4, Congress must exercise aggressive oversight to track and account for the money that is being spent and to ensure that the Department of Defense follows through with performing annual audits, which they haven't done since 2018 and they haven't done since 1990. Implementing recommendations and achieving a clean audit as quickly as possible. So they're calling for what is it? Where is it? Achieving a clean audit as quickly as possible. Congress encourages, this is the one, number 5. Congress encourages the DoD to complete its full audit before the end of this calendar year and report back to Congress immediately. I mean, it's a resolution, so they probably wouldn't do it, even if this resolution passes, which I don't even know if it's going to pass. Congress encourages the Department of State and other agencies to use combined power diplomacy, foreign assistance, and a strong and fair economy to ensure our nation is safe. I'm not sure what they're talking about there. I mean, they're saying use more diplomacy and foreign assistance instead of using a military option,
Which
right?
could
That would be something new.
Yeah. But they could also put foreign assistance as humanitarian aid and put NGOs there.
Yeah.
So that kind of leaves it a little open.
Yeah. Congress supports the elimination of the Overseas Contingency Operations Account, which makes waging war too easy. So they want to eliminate the OCO, which is great, which we talked about. I explained to you what that was. Congress supports moves to reduce the priority given to war in our foreign policy and our current war-based national economy by using significant cuts, up to $350 billion, as detailed above, which I talked about, from current budget plans, while using the funds to increase our diplomatic capacity and for domestic programs that will keep our nation and our people safer. So that's pretty much the whole resolution there.
Yeah.
I think, it's a really, really detailed breakdown of how shitty and excessively expensive the Pentagon is, and advocates for defunding and reinvestment into the people, and details budget cuts that could be made in a bill after. But so I got to say, I haven't seen a resolution this detailed like this, right? I've seen a few resolutions. I haven't seen one this detailed. So I like that. It's pretty good. And they're putting all the facts together and putting it on paper as a legislative resolution. I think it's a decent first step. Acknowledge the problem first, right? And then What I'm going to be looking out for, though, is not only the passage of this, but the introduction of a bill that compels action. They have the authority to compel action. Then if the resolution or bill doesn't pass, a mass movement to get it passed needs to happen. I'll be looking for Ilhan and Barbara Lee and the co-sponsors of this resolution to either show up at actions to directly reference this resolution, or have press releases, or blast it on social media, or put out a call to be somewhere for a protest. This is the next step that I don't think we're not going to see. I don't know if we're going to see this. Legislators using social media presence to mobilize thousands, if not millions, of their followers or people across the country. They have the power to do that. They have the power to do that. It would be a huge first step if somebody actually did that. I'm even curious if there's some bullshit rules about someone in Congress not being able to do that. But if that's the case, that needs to be eliminated. But can't mobilize people if you're in Congress. I feel like, I don't know if that's a rule or not. It shouldn't be a rule if it is. So perhaps they think doing something like that would be risking a multi-term, membership to Congress. I feel like it goes back to the election system and the failure of everybody recognizing the lack of transparency in our public election system. Because you wouldn't have to worry about getting reelected if you don't play ball. If we had Bernie win the primary, if we had Bernie go up against Hillary, things would be different right now. They rigged that election. They rigged 2016. They rigged the 2020 primary. And then the 2020 general is in question with so many things that are not, the proprietary software, the private companies printing ballots, the hours-long lines, the fact that it's not a national holiday. There's so many things. But if our elections were straight, we'd have many more grassroots people in office, no doubt in my mind. And I feel like we would have a leftist president too. So your guys' thoughts on this resolution here?
Well, I think it's a great blueprint of what we can stop the next budget, because these budgets come every year, right? So, my beef is always like, you're crying about it after it happens. Like, where were you? Why weren't you mobilizing out all this money that was just spent, that was laid out right here by Barbara Lee before it happened? Like, why this bill was going through appropriations in Congress, you should have been bitching and complaining about it then, bringing attention to it then. So if we do get some movement from people on this bill and they start recognizing these things, if in fact, out of the blue, Ilhan calls press conferences and talks about it and says, look what's going on. Look at all this useless, stupid spending. We're waging war. 60% of our budget goes towards war. We need to change it. It would be a good step of changing it in the future. I mean, because you can just see everything we talked about. Our Congress is just infested with the military-industrial complex. You look at the whole sanctions regime thing. It's all about who's our enemy, who's our adversary. How do we change their behavior? How do we enact an act of war against these people to get them to play ball, to get them to have our monetary system? And that's what this is all about. All those weapons that are spent right there are spent to keep these other countries in our monetary system. We want global control with the monetary system, so that our elites, I shouldn't say our elites, the Western elites or the Western predator class maintain control. So even though it's a resolution now, if it's a blueprint for the future on stopping the next one, like I say, Adam Smith, right there in Oz's hometown, he was the one in charge of this budget. He gets so much money and kickback from the military-industrial complex and stuff like that. But I look at it more right now as a big virtue signal than anything about really stopping actual policies moving forward, because we would stop, because this is not a new thing, fam. Bernie Sanders 20 years ago said, like, who are you worried about, Iran? Who are you worried about, Iraq? We spend more than the next 7 countries combined. And that's still the same, and nothing has changed.
But people don't know that. People still don't know that. So I think it serves a purpose to go over this legislation that's out there. Yes, it is a virtue signal if you're not going to push anything to actually make it actual legislation. But we have to remember, guys, we cannot rely on politicians to push this. What they're going to do is put out resolutions. But in order to actually feel compelled to make it into actual law, the people have to compel them. because there's no other way. Like we said, electoralism isn't it. It's not. We can't continue incremental pushes like this and wait till after the fact. The thing that is going to force the hand of politicians, because they're not going to do it out of the goodness of their own heart. The thing that's going to force the hand of politicians is people actually having an anti-war movement, a movement that stands against all anti-interventionism or interventionism from the United States. That is an anti-interventionist movement, an anti-imperialist movement that says hands off everybody at this point, because we keep having hands off Venezuela, hands off Syria, hands off this. No, hands off everybody. Cutting ties too, that I didn't see here mentioned, because I don't think that's even allowable. Israel is one of the largest areas that our money goes into, and they're committing genocide. They are committing, whether it's intentional or slow genocide. And that there's a reason why Israel isn't mentioned, because believe it or not, the Israeli military occupation and the regime of Israel is far more powerful than we can even conceive. It is up there. That we need Israel. Biden told you, if we didn't have it, we'd create it. And so that's something that I think people need. They need to understand. We can't wait on Ilhan Omar or Barbara Lee or all these politicians to just do this. You have to make them do it. Yeah. You have to compel them to do it.
Yeah. And the last thing I'm going to say really quick, Johnny, is the thing I'm concerned about is that they take that money that they're using, that they're spending overseas to fight terrorism abroad, that they come home and they switch it to fighting domestic terrorism at home. That is a big concern, because anytime they start pulling out all these countries, when they say close 60% of the bases, what are you going to do with those weapons? You're going to bring them home and give them to the police departments to use against us, because that's what they did last time. And I think this next part, when you're going to talk about the HR 256, which is so important, and I'll make my comments after you get into this, because this is the AUMF. Go ahead, Johnny, take it away, and please.
Yeah, real quick, I just got to point out that Ilhan was the only co-sponsor to this resolution, to the last resolution. And she's the only member of the squad that was a co-sponsor to it. So that's really interesting.
They should all be on it.
Yeah.
Along the same anti-imperialist vibes, right? Because defunding the Pentagon is definitely anti-imperialist. 6 days ago, on June 16th, the House passed HR 256 to repeal the authorization for use of military force against Iraq resolution of 2002. So this passed in the House, and it basically simply says, be enacted that the authorization for the use of force against Iraq is hereby repealed. So it was repealed. And it wasn't just, I want to make clear that although HR 256 only shows that the authorization for use of military was repealed, if you actually dig deeper in the actions of how the bill was passed, we see that in order for this to get passed with no argument or provisions to it, 2 other resolutions were passed. So I have a screenshot, I think, Oz, in the next slide. But you can also go to it. If you go to the list of actions, the list of actions are right there. Congress.gov, people should be looking at it. I believe the next screenshot should show you. Yes, so that screenshot, yeah. So it says resolution provides for consideration under a closed rule and provides for consideration of HR 1187 under a structured rule, and then it mentions another resolution there. So 2 other resolutions were passed to get this passed. So one of them has multiple things in the resolution, ranging from establishing sustainable finance advisory committee, and in there, I don't know if you can go to it as the next slide. Right, so it's called HR 1187, Corporate Governance Improvement and Investor Protection Act. So this was passed in the House with no argument or anything like that, with no provisions or anything, to pass the repeal of the other Authorization Act. So this is for another show, because there's a lot of shit in there, and this one, and I don't know if you can go to the page that I linked there, Oz.
I think this one.
After that, the one that you show, 1187.
38.
Yeah, slide 39.
39.
So there's
There you
that. That's GovTrack, and then slide 40 has the link to the actual thing. But I'm just going to talk a little bit about it. It will need Senate approval. So this got passed in the House without anything, and basically there's something about ESG disclosure simplification. It's a huge ass bill. There's some things that seem interesting. Title II says shareholder political transparency, which is interesting. I want to read more into that. Greater accountability and pay is something in this bill. Climate risk disclosure. Something about, I was reading some into this a little bit, and it was something about like building this committee to then provide reasons for what you should invest in, and disclosure of tax havens and offshoring. And then at the bottom, there's a lot more titles, and then they disclose some Title 10, it says Uyghur forced labor disclosure. So there's something in there that they put in for the Uyghurs. This is HR 1187. So that, HR 1187. So my point in showing that, along with HR 1187, there's another one that got passed with no issue or problems, no revision or provisions, and that is Resolution for HRES 467, and that's only about budget allocations for the Committee of Appropriations. I'm just showing you that Congress cannot just pass one bill simply, that there's always deals being made, basically, it looks like. So HR 256 will go to the Senate to be approved as well. So let's see what happens. HR 256 is that one which repeals the use of authorization for
slide 42
force in Iraq.
Yep.
Yeah. See, instead of Bernie Sanders talking about Joe Biden is my friend and I feel a lot comfortable with him more than I did the Trump administration, he should be saying,
Hillary Clinton.
Ladies and gentlemen, HR 256 is now moved through the House. It is coming to the Senate. We need to pass and destroy this awful, awful authoritarian use of military force against the Iraq resolution. What does that mean? It means that the president, no matter who he is, whether it be the last guy, Trump, Biden, or the next guy, cannot go to war without the consent of Congress. Very, very important. It will save a lot of lives. But is he talking about that? Is he saying this shit right now? No, he's not. The same way the whole Democrats were quiet when Barack Obama came to office. Remember, they're like, oh, dude, they're gonna get rid of the authorization use of military force that was passed under George Bush after 9/11 the very next day, because everybody was scared shitless. They're like, oh, just got to pass it. Got to give the president the power right now. They just took down the Twin Towers. We can't oppose anything. Only Barbara Lee, who produced that resolution you just talked about, was the only one to stand up against this act. Now it's 20-something odd years later, and we're still looking at the authorized use of military force, which means that the president can go around Congress, doesn't even have to seek their approval to go and kill the same people who try to kill my father. That's what George Bush said, right? I mean, Biden got in, Obama got in. A lot of people thought it would be squash for him, but no, he used it himself to do his drone warfare all over the place. And what do we get out of it? Syria, Libya, the whole 9 yards. So I'm very interested to see why those progressive champions aren't talking about this right now, because this right here, HR 256, fucking huge. Huge.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that this is like super under the radar. Like I haven't seen this. I don't watch mainstream media, but you don't see it on the news. I haven't seen any other independent channels talking about it. So your opinions, fam?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's good that this is happening, but again, I don't think anything will happen without public knowledge and public outcry and public movements, because they have no reason. While we're the most propagandized nation in the world, we pay more attention to reality TV spats between Marjorie Taylor Greene, AOC, spats between independent media, spats between whatever it is. Like we're the reality TV nation. And so unless Americans start paying attention as to where your money is going, and if you believe that your money, if you believe in the system, besides MMT, like if you believe your dollars are funding whatever, this war and that war and these sanctions and all of that, then you should care because you're not benefiting from it. Even if you don't care about other people being, blown up, you're not benefiting from it. So it's got to come from an anti-war movement. And I think that's why I give accolades to people like Magnus who are trying to push this sort of unity of like, hey, I don't care who you voted for, but let's end these wars. Then we can deal with each other. Then we can sit down and have a situation where we have an even keel to debate our ideas, debate our ideology, whether you're for reforming capitalism. And I'm not, right? But we can't even do that when we have an encroaching fascistic takeover that the Biden administration is pushing and an ever expanding military industrial complex. We can't do that, guys. We can't fight about Medicare for all in the gulags. We can't. It's just like, what's going to happen? That's where we're at. And so I think this is a good step. And I think breaking it down is a good thing so people know that it's there. But I think the push needs to happen ground up.
Yeah. John, where did you find all this information? Because it's important to point it out, because this is what, once again, if the squad was who we thought they were, right? They would be talking about this like, listen, guys, we just pushed this through the House. We got to get the Senate on board for this. This is a chance. 30-something odd years, 20-something odd years, not 30, 21 years right now. Okay. We've had the AUMF. We have to seize the moment right now. We got it through the House. Let's call your senators. Let's push to get this passed. How did you find this information? Because I haven't heard anything from progressives online or Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, who were supposed to be anti-war progressives. How did you hear about this stuff? What made you get to this story?
Well, I saw a leftist meme page share a tweet from Ilhan, and I'm like, oh, that's a nice tweet, but is there any legislation behind it? Or, it was the it was like an anti-war tweet. And I'm like, is there any legislation behind that? And then I was linked to her page. I wasn't linked to any resolution or anything, so I had to do some digging. But because obviously they don't know, no one knows, no one looks into the congressional record of Congress, right? So I looked through it and I found there's a lot of things that that she is co-sponsored. Ilhan Omar. So if you go to congress.gov/member/Ilhan Omar, you'll find everything that she's been co-sponsored or introduced to, right? So I looked at the most recent stuff, and this was one up there, and so was the HR Repeal Authorization Act. So defund the Pentagon, I'm like, hey, well, at least it's on paper. And I'm like, how the hell have I not heard about this? And why aren't leftist pages even talking about this? It's
Exactly.
a big deal
Exactly.
to even recognize all the Pentagon's bullshit. Like you're almost putting a target on your back by doing that, especially in Congress. I'm happy that it's there, but the next steps need to be taken. The next step has to be taken. So I think I feel like they can't even talk about this shit. But if we make a huge storm about it and shit, like if we make a big deal about it, if everybody goes to the Convo Couch store to grab your Defund the Pentagon shirt and
right here.
Get it up, Oz. Next one, number 43.
Nice transition.
There you go, Johnny.
you can get yourself a shirt and rep it. And I also have I just made this design for the anti-imperialist one. I gotta get that shit.
Nice.
I'm wearing that to the gym. But the Defund the Pentagon one, I have the face mask one, and I've had people walk up to me like, oh, hey, cool mask and shit. And yeah, I'm down with that and stuff. So it gets people talking. So, visit our store. You can grab that. It's finally, the store is up. This is the premiere of our store. You can see this little picture here.
Order your stuff.
You notice that the guy with the fam shirt is kind of holding the hand with the person that says, I love Putin, with the American flag. And the Defund the Pentagon person is hanging out with the vegan but will eat the rich person. It's just a great party going on over here, fams.
Guys, it's
get your
awesome.
I love
It's
Putin
up.
shirts for 4th of July. That shit will be hilarious.
Oh, yeah, for 4th of July.
Oh, yes. I'm totally wearing mine for the 4th of July.
There's
I'm
the
a little
Defund the
Putin.
Pentagon mask. Yeah, it goes vegan, but we'll eat the rich.
Yeah, that's right, guys. For all my vegans out there.
Oz,
if
can you
you're
take
not a
away
vegan-
Johnny's screen for 2 seconds so you can see the Defund the Pentagon mask really quick? There it is. Look at that. That's the mask Johnny's been pimping.
Well, why we don't even need masks anymore.
I know, right?
Well, actually, you do need them in the Uber still here.
Oh,
I don't
in the
know.
Ubers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I found that. Okay, so Johnny, you have the Convo Couch .store. Use code fuck Biden, fuck Trump for
Number
15%
46.
off.
Yeah.
Slide 46. There you go. Fuck Biden, fuck Trump.
For everybody that's watching, thank you for watching. You
Fuck
can use
Biden, fuck Trump for
Trump
15% off.
For 15% off. And the shirts are already
John,
pretty
I
cheap,
gotta say, dude, stellar work, man. Awesome shit. Way to bring it to the table.
Yep.
Way to find it. I saw you doing hours of research to get all this shit done, but it was well worth it. And people can make their assessment on what's going on. You know, I still am looking at the fact that this stuff wasn't called out when they were making this budget, when they were doing this. This is the time. And it's one thing to say, I'm going to sign a resolution. It's another thing to use and mobilize your people, your followers, to get in the street or get on the phone to call Congress to actually make this legislation stick. Moving forward, the fact that it says, like, we need to cut that Pentagon budget in half. Well, that budget, you know, those are the people who are running this place, this world. And it's a very big, you know, big group to push back against, but it's what needs to be done in the future. This is not something that's new. This Pentagon budget's been out of hand for a long time. We hear it all the time. We spend more on the Pentagon than the next 7 to 8 to 9 to 10 countries combined. So, I mean, there's a lot of positives here. I'm glad that Ilhan Omar and Barbali are putting this out there, but a little bit late to the party, fam. That's my personal opinion. And I want to stop the next budget.
Yeah, I'd rather it be than nothing. I mean,
Yeah.
at this point, I mean, I'm glad it's being out there. Hopefully, people start understanding we need to stop fighting amongst, focusing on the Proud Boy and Antifa, on any of these groups. Focus on fighting the establishment. Focus on fighting the people at the top, the people who are pulling the strings, the state agencies, the merging of the technocratic the corporations and these multi-billionaire companies, the privatization of our industries, the fourth industrial revolution, what we aim to do to the global south. I have an update on Peru coming up on Friday. Should be done by the article by then. You guys, this is really, really bad in Peru. The military is on guard for stopping a coup or stopping a protest of a coup. There's more and more information coming out there. Our empire and our imperialism and the OAS, what they do. This is all part of it. So this is why we focus on these topics and why we will continue focusing on them.
Yeah. Johnny, great stuff. Anything else before we read some super rays?
I almost feel like we should start this Defund the Pentagon movement. Maybe we should praise Ilhan and all them for introducing this resolution and then encourage them to take the next step. Because I don't know. There's some reason for why they're not talking about it, right? There's some reason for what there's no press release about it. It looks like when AOC did the Easter egg, whatever IG live thing, she was telling people to organize and shit, right? So I don't know. If we make a big deal about it and if it gets national media attention, then that's something that maybe they'll be compelled to do. And we'll see. I mean, I want to see a ton of Defund the Pentagon shirts on September 11th, 2021. Maybe that's the one with Magnus there and a bunch of people there that is anti-war, stop the wars. We can say Defund the Pentagon. That goes along with it completely.
Yeah. I'm also being very cautious to make sure
to talk about this.
They should. They should. You know, and you can go to those conservative libertarians who are anti-war and hate the Pentagon too as well, because the fiscal part, that's all that stuff that you're saying right there is music to their ears. We're spending all that money. Oh my God, we're spending all that money. Also, the Ron Paul types, they talk about blowback. All that money is spent is going to come back and bite us in the ass because there's going to be blowback from it.
It's just different reasons for doing it. Either way, it doesn't matter. Stop the fucking war, defund the Pentagon.
All of it. Just stop it. All right, Mad Wolf. It's like the movie Running Man, where the government has censored everything and will make up shit on you to make you look like a bad guy, like they did to Arnold Schwarzenegger. By the way, 100 people over here is great. Trey, fams, say fam.
Fam.
Fams. Say fams.
Fams. Don't tell me
Fams.
what to say.
All right,
I don't
good.
play. I don't do tricks.
He doesn't do trick, but fams, we got the fams there for Trey Wright. Joni Bug, great show, you guys. A special thanks to Johnny. So right about Israel. Yeah, Johnny, that was just amazing work today. I really loved it, enjoyed it. I learned a lot today. I mean, obviously, I was knee deep in that freaking hearing, and there's so much information that comes out of these hearings, right? When they sit there and they start talking about these resolutions or talking about these bills or having committees on what they're going to do in the future, they're telling you everything you need to know. They're giving you the information. It's just people taking the time to sit down, dissect it, and regurgitate it.
And it's hard to
give it the
watch
people.
because they
Yeah.
pretty much all say the same thing, and
Yeah.
they don't give a shit. And sanctions,
Yeah.
yay! Like,
Yeah. Well, today's show, the Convo Couch, has done a lot of homework for people that they can watch in 2.5 hours rather than spending the hours of these hearings that are just ridiculous.
Yep.
And looking through these bills and the small ink that Johnny pointed out in these bills. David Asper, love you guys. Freedom from tyranny is the cause. That's David Asper. Thank you so much. We have 100 people watching on the Rokfin, guys. You're amazing. Kerry Marcus here, Joni Bug, James Evans. If I missed anybody, Frederick Murphy, we love you. Vincent Bailey, James Evans, you are amazing. Tom, just Tom. I love Tom.
Tom from MySpace.
Yeah, Prime Cat, Tom from MySpace.
He was a
ICU. There's so many awesome people. Guys, get on over to the
I
Rokfin.
miss Tom from
Tom-
MySpace.
from
He was
MySpace?
he was better than all the other idiots from Twitter and
Better
from
than
Facebook.
Jack?
Better than Zuckerberg.
Tom is better than Jack. Sorry. And thank you all to the YouTube as well. Abolish Politicians is hanging on out.
Yes.
Saul Construct. Saul, we love you, fam. Saul.
You better call Saul.
Reese Mack, you better call him Manny Buds. Sun Green, William Wallace. We got to bring back William Wallace. Really? We got to do a whole thing about William Wallace.
You mean
when we
Henry
get back.
Wallace?
No, William Wallace.
Oh, okay.
William Wallace was Braveheart, fam.
Oh, okay.
Henry
My mind
Wallace
always goes
was
to politics.
I know he does. Well, William Wallace was politics too as well. Hold.
You're right, actually. Yeah.
He was.
He was.
And Charles Herrera. Thank you guys so much. What is this garbage? That's what we are, garbage. Trish Taylor is there. We love you, Peace Dove. Thank you guys to everybody who's
Yeah, shout
watched
out
on the
to Jilly
YouTube today.
Love.
Absolutely.
Our moderator.
Jilly Love is in the house.
Moderators.
Special thanks to Johnny today, to Oz for making the show fucking complete. It was great. He had the overalls and everything. If you haven't checked out Roar Media, go on over ROAR. They got a Rokfin. They got a YouTube tomorrow night to Hell and Back, episode 5 with Shanda Master. We're going to be talking about the prison to drug pipeline, fam. It is really disgusting. And when you think about it, it's like we are just lab rats. We are people. We are dollar signs to the elites. They don't give a shit who they infect. They don't care whose lives they ruin. As long as they can make a profit off us, they are fine with that. And the hell that people go through who are addicted to these opioids or stimulants or other drugs or sleep medications, it doesn't make a difference. They have a whole plethora of drugs to get you addicted to. And they don't want customers. They want addicts because they make money if you are an addict. Johnny, got anything else to say?
Yeah, shout out to El Barto, DC, Phoenix 55, Peace Dub, everybody on YouTube. Get on over and check out Rokfin. I just put a link in the chat. Sign up for free. You just got to give your email. That's it. We have a lot of our content's on there. Sometimes we get off the air and talk only on Rokfin because there's some things that we can't talk about on YouTube because we're suppressed and censored and all this. So just getting you all on there, get there. And if we do, when the day comes when YouTube gets rid of us, we'll be on Rokfin.
Yep, we will. Some final super rays to close the show. A-Rem for the smokers and the coughers. Keep on rolling and stoning. Oh my God, A-Rem, you are great. Jim Garrison. Thank you, Jim Garrison. We look forward to seeing your next case out there. Here's a 5 spot. Thank you, Jim Garrison.
Thank you.
You're amazing.
You guys are all awesome.
100 people, 102. You guys keep coming on. Accidental Activists. See you tomorrow for To Hell and
We
Back.
love
Shanda
you.
Master. We love you. And remember, everybody out there, we love you too. For Pasta Jardula,
Fiorella and the Russians.
Johnny Sue hanging on out, and Oz with his overalls.
Combo out. See you Friday.
Bye, everybody.
See you tomorrow.